Mark, it's a pleasure to speak to you. There's a lot happening, in the last month really, but in the last 24 hours, been pretty intense, and it's got a lot of people split. I'm actually going to read out a post I did a couple of hours ago, but it kind of sums up where I stand on this, and I'll summarize it actually instead of reading it. But essentially, my position is we're at a crossroads right now, and either Trump delivers on his threats, which if he delivers on exactly what he's threatened, it's a war crime. I think it's indisputable. Or he off-ramps, and then it shows that everything he's been saying for the last 48 hours is him to pressure Iran to as many concessions as possible before wrapping up the war or starting to off-ramp. First, do you agree with that position, kind of being at a crossroad and these are the only two options, or is there any other alternatives?
So look, he's been confronted with, there's three ways to kind of resolve this. There's you look at him as three types of deterrence. There's deterrence by denial, where he would have had the wherewithal to knock down all their systems that could threaten the Straits of Hormuz, and then establish a defensive ability to do convoy operations. That's where I think Admiral Cooper and Central Command were headed, but I think the president probably doesn't have the patience for that. That's a weeks or months to go kind of solution. He doesn't like it. The other one, the more traditional ones, negotiations by entanglement. That's where you do, you try to get deterrence by entanglement. You get other countries to get involved, and I don't think he's a big fan of that right now. And the third one, the one I think he's on, and which you implied, is deterrence by cost imposition, where I punish you so hard you change your attitude or your policy. And I think that's not going to work. I think all this rhetoric is kind of like him trying to amp the game up before he does some kind of attack here to try to force this change of behavior. I don't think it's going to work, but I think that's where we're at. The one thing I would say is, when he says attack bridges and energy systems, I did a lot of targeting in my life. I can find lots of, probably 40 out of 41 bridges I ever targeted. They were legal. The judges agree with me. They were legal military targets, not a war crime. Bridges routinely are targeted because that's how the military maneuvers around. It's easy to justify to a judge, to a legal construct. Energy systems are different. And when he said stuff like that, you're right. There's a very, an energy system that's just about a military base, no problem. But an energy system that's dual use or is really only about providing power to the civilian community, the United States should not target, and I hope wouldn't target. But you're right. If they did target it, they'd start to get themselves in trouble, ethically or legally. So hopefully that won't happen. But I do think he's going to, quote, double down on some kind of really strong strikes after the 8 o'clock speech to the country.
Oh, the 8 o'clock deadline. I don't know if is there a speech at 8 o'clock? I know that a deadline is then.
Oh, I don't. I thought he might address the nation at the same time. I'm not sure. Maybe I'm wrong.
Oh, maybe.
Yeah.
All right. So I agree with most things that you said, if not all of it. I think if he delivers on it, what his threats are, you can target bridges. Targeting bridges alone, including bridges that are used for civilian use, don't immediately constitute a war crime, because it depends on to what proportion are they used militarily, etc. And what is the intention behind striking it. Now, striking civilian infrastructure to pressure a military is a war crime. It's a collective punishment. Now, striking it in the context that he's talked about is obviously a war crime. Now, the disclaimer there is Trump has said a lot of things and he didn't mean. This is the way he speaks. He talked about invading Greenland and making Greenland and Canada another American state. So that's why it's important to take what he says with a grain of salt and not pick and choose. He says something about Greenland, you're like, oh, he's just kidding. And then he says something about Iran, oh, he's a war criminal. I think, and I've made a statement today, I don't like that rhetoric, but I understand this is him, and the rhetoric alone doesn't really matter that much to me. It's the actions that follow. So I'm kind of holding judgment till tonight to see what happens. There are discussions, and I think people are over-exaggerating. There was a report by The Guardian about, I'm sure you've seen it, advisors to the president saying they're worried about his threats and his rhetoric, his extreme rhetoric, and even the possibility of him using nuclear weapons. And there's Tucker Carlson put out a statement, I think today or yesterday, saying that the advisors should resign and even try to hold off the nuclear launch codes from the president, the what is it called? The nuclear football or whatever it's called. So how significant are these concerns? Again, I personally, if I had to guess, and this is all of us guessing, these leaks are intentional again to pressure Iran. This is all part of a pressure campaign. It's part of Trump's negotiating tactic. One would hope.
So I do think he does things like when he does a True Social post that talks to the end of a civilization, things like that. That is rhetoric to drive change. You're exactly right, and you described it that way in your opening in your opening thoughts. I agree with that. There is rhetoric that is absolutely designed to enhance, the effect on the adversary. These leaks about, basically what are 25th Amendment issues, they piss him off. I promise you, because quote, no one did this to Sleepy Joe, Biden. Why would they? Why would you consider it for him? He's much, I'm much smarter, much more, agile, a much deeper thinker, a much harder worker than Joe Biden. How can you say this to me? And that's when you talk about the nuclear codes, you're talking about you don't pull the nuclear codes from him. That's not an option. The military officials involved won't let that happen. That you'd have to do an article. I mean, a 25th, a cabinet level discussion and vote to strip him of power. And that's just, again, I don't think that's good. That is absolutely what Carolyn Levitt would call false news, right? So I don't think that's him. I think that's other people. But I do think he intentionally spreads rhetoric to your broader point to get this going. But I'd leave the 25th Amendment stuff out of it.
I agree. Let's go back to the first statement you made, is that the Strait of Hormuz could be opened militarily and that Trump had that option. That is the best option in your opinion. I don't want to put words in your mouth, but Trump doesn't have the patience for it, whether it's for political purposes or he just doesn't want to be in a quote unquote forever war. What would it take to open the Strait of Hormuz militarily? Because everyone I spoke with told me this is one of the most audacious goals to have. It's just an unreasonable goal, a very costly goal, one that is even impossible to achieve, considering how easy it is for Iran to close it. Like, it doesn't take much that even the world's biggest navy, which is better, the US Navy is stronger than all other navies combined. That's why Trump's request for other navies to help, other countries to help is pretty moot, because they can't do anything if America can't do anything. But even the US, the world's biggest military, cannot just stop every single drone from striking ships, every single missile, every single mine.
You're right. So, I mean, it's a two-step thing. The first is you have to reduce the threat to a convoy to what do you call a military manageable risk. That doesn't mean zero, right? The military operates in a risk environment. So that's knocking down the anti-ship cruise missiles, which I think they've done a lot of. Knock those away. Those are older missiles that were hard. You can't hide them in the Montgomery garage, right? The cruise missile, the Erector launcher. So they're identifiable and attackable. Then there's the drones. Now that's a problem. I spent a lot of time in Ukraine. I can lift the Shahed drone, and with your help, you and I could carry 10 of them into my garage, and that's very hard to target, right? When something's that mobile and easy and storable. So I think there's a lot of drones left. And the question is, how many have we gotten rid of a reasonable percentage of them? The third part in the Straits area is manned and unmanned surface attack craft. The Iranians have used manned attack craft for 40 years to harass shipping, and they've done it recently. But they also, even ahead of Ukraine, were thinking about unmanned attack craft 5-6 years ago, and they've used a few of them in the last in the last 4 weeks. So they have both of them. So you have to remove those. And again, you can easy to remove when they're in the water, but when they're put on a boat trailer and taken away to the Montgomery garage, harder to target unless you see it go in the garage. And then finally, their mines. And my mines are challenging and difficult, not because you can't remove them, but because it's an extremely deliberate, slow process that can only be done by certain vessels. And it always goes much slower than you think. All right. So you got to remove those 4 things, get them. At some point, Admiral Cooper goes, you know what? I've got it at a military manageable risk. I would have thought that was by now. I was wrong. It was wrong because I think we focused our targeting elsewhere for a while, for the first couple of weeks. But now that they're focusing on those 4 kind of targets in that area, maybe they'll get to a point. Once they get to that point, he balances it against what kind of force protection can I bring in place for the convoy, because it's not unlimited. And in fact, one of the things I mentioned is that only, to my mind, a surprisingly small amount of our air and maritime forces are present in the Middle East. I know it looks like a lot, but we've had greater levels of force both in 1991 and 2001 and 2003, and even in 2012 and 13 when General Mattis was maximizing the pressure on Iran. But what you do with the forces you have is you have to have an unblinking eye. And this means you have to pull that unblinking eye a little bit off of northern Iran, the nuclear programs, things like that, and really focus it on the Straits so you can see if there's any kind of, oh, I missed that cruise missile launcher. I just see it coming out of a building. Here's how I can put a missile on it quickly. So you got to have that unblinking eye. Then you have to have at least 4 combat air patrols. That's eight fighter aircraft in stations along the Straits, obviously at altitude. And they're equipped with both strike weapons in case somebody pulls something out of a garage, but also with the advanced precision kill weapon system, which is a weapon that shoots down an inexpensive rocket that shoots down Shahed drones at like 95%. With a sniper pod on the plane. So, that's step 2. Step 3 is you need to have A-10s or attack helicopters patrolling along at water's edge to knock out any surface attack craft you missed. And then finally, you've got to have air defense destroyers. We call them Aegis class destroyers, with a good air defense system. And this is where you're right. When he's asking for help, very few countries can provide this. But we need 10 to 14 of those ships dedicated to a convoy mission. So you got to have the defensive stuff done. You got to have the offense, your own ability to move the convoys through done, and then you do it. And I will tell you, if it's mined, you then have to add in a couple weeks where you're defending, doing all that overhead stuff, defending littoral combat ships, doing minesweeping. This is a weeks to months long endeavor. Yeah. For which I don't think the president has the
not even the president. I want to go through the details, but even the global economy, like to take weeks and months to open up the Strait of Hormuz, the global economy can barely sustain a couple of weeks. 1 or 2 weeks would be a month. The more economists I speak to, a month would be devastating for the global economy. So this is a very important concern that we assuming it's possible, it may not even be feasible. And you talked about, again, I'm not the military expert, so I'll be mainly focusing on questions, is we talked about having the Aegis destroyers there, 10 to 15 of them. But wouldn't they become targets as well for the Iranians that cause significant casualties for the Americans as well? Because one of the reasons, because if Trump could have opened, sorry to interrupt you, Admiral, but if Trump could have opened the Strait of Hormuz, why didn't he start the process 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago?
So what you do is knock down the risk till it's acceptable. We did that in the Bab el-Mandeb Straits, so we could then put ships in there to protect shipping go through. And we had several hundred, probably 300 plus weapons fired at the U.S. ships and none hit. So I do think they're actually pretty capable at knocking these down. Now, there's a difference between the Houthis and the Iranians. But the Houthis were using Iranian missiles and drones. The difference is mines, and in fact, they're using a small attack craft too. So they're using 3 of the 4. Now, I don't think they were organized and as thick as the Iranians are.
Smaller volume as well.
Yeah, that's what I mean. I don't think they're as thick around the Straits of Hormuz as the Iranians would be around the Straits of Hormuz. But look, we have, against an Iranian threat, opened up the Straits in the past and brought through 25 sets of convoys of Kuwaiti reflagged LNG tankers. That was a different Iran, a less capable Iran, but it was also a less capable U.S. Navy. Do I think this is risk-free? No. I mean, our military doesn't operate in risk-free environments. You would have to assume some risk here. I don't know that it guarantees American casualties, but I do think it is a executable mission if asked to do it. But when they brief the president on the risk, he may say that's too much risk. I'm just going to keep bombing. But you've already mentioned the bombing alone doesn't appear to be changing how the Iranians view things.
About the eyes in the sky. So one of the things that the Americans and Israelis had that was relatively successful is to have kind of the coordinates, the beaming coordinates, the satellites beam coordinates to the fighter jet relatively quickly. And then the fighter jet immediately the closest fighter jet will then go and strike the target. So that was one of the strategies the Americans and Israelis used in the early days, still used today in the early days of the war, and one that gave them a lot of confidence of being able to degrade Iranian capabilities. But then if you look at the reports, the results of this, putting the Strait of Hormuz aside, just that Iran's ability to fire missiles with the amount of firepower, the amount of tens of thousands of targets that were struck, Iran is still has, according to CNN that spoke to intelligence officials, 50% of their missile launchers. They were meant to be 70 to 80% in the first 2 weeks of the war. They have 50% of their missiles, 50% of their drones. And there was an Israeli report that came in. Israeli intelligence officers spoke to an Israeli news channel that Israel determined they cannot, as a country, as a military, they cannot destroy all missiles and missile launchers that Iranians have because they're too deep on the ground. And today a report came in the Times of Israel. IDF admits Israel overestimated damage to Hezbollah and also believes Iran can keep firing missiles as long as the war continues. So you've just got all the initial assumptions that whether they're legitimate or not is a different discussion, but all these assumptions did not materialize. Where Iran is right now, significantly ahead of what the expectations were, or what the reality was portrayed to be a few weeks ago.
Look, I'm careful. Leaked intelligence reports of 50%, that it's all magically 50% makes me right away, just having spent my whole career in intelligence or in receiving intelligence reports. I'm not sure I take that at face value. But I do believe they have more missiles and more launchers and certainly more drones than we and the Israelis thought they would have at this point in the conflict. There's no doubt they have more. Whether it's quite that high, I'm not sure I'd stipulate to that. But in any case, it is a higher number than, say, 10%, or 20%, which is where you'd want them to be, down that low, so that because we've removed their ability to produce more. That's off the table right now. We've destroyed the production that we and the Israelis have. And I think there's, speaking of intelligence reports, there's good intelligence reports that's broadly happened. So what Iran has, they're either, it goes away. When they fire it, they have one less and they're not getting a replacement. When we strike it successfully, or the Israelis strike it successfully, there's one less and they have to, and they're not replacing it. But the problem is it's a very high number, and or too high a number, for everyone's comfort. So that's why we're not at the point where you can start convoy operations, because I think there's too much unknown out there. Particularly the drones bother me more there. The ballistic missiles aren't really what you would use against convoy operations, but you would use them against Israel, United Arab Emirates, Saudi Arabia, whoever you wanted to use it against, to kind of influence American decision making.
And American bases.
Yeah. Or the American bases. But here again, the ballistic missiles we can shoot down. I'm not worried about how Patriot and THAAD are doing against the ballistic missiles. Where the American system has failed is in counter drone. By not having drone interceptors of any significant ground-based drone interceptors, the United States really had an Achilles heel, and has an Achilles heel, in defending against long-range one-way attack drones like Shaheds.
Agree. Going back to the missile discussion, I had in one of my interviews, so anyone that watches all my shows probably knows which one I'm referring to. I won't mention the name, but someone that has access to classified information did say, and look, he said, Mario, Israeli classified information. He said, Mario, it's public knowledge that Israel's munitions are, the interceptor munitions are low. Now, how low is a different discussion, but they're being preserved to ensure that the barrier of when to intercept a missile has been brought down to preserve the stockpiles. And I think it's no secret, what I've mentioned, everyone knows that the interceptors are at low levels. We don't know how low, and not only the Israelis, Gulf, and the Americans. So isn't there a race right now, the Iranian missile stockpiles and ability to fire them versus the stockpiles of interceptors, air defense munitions, that are a lot harder to manufacture and one would argue in a lot lower supply levels for some of the countries than Iranian missiles?
I agree. The one thing I'd say on manufacturing is there'll be no Iranian manufacturing, but they don't need to if they have a significant number.
I was told as well they could. So I've spoken to a few people that said they have the ability to manufacture missiles underground. Do you believe that's really difficult or impossible?
I don't think they do that anymore. I don't think they're in a position to do that. They can not fabricate, but integrate parts that they have. In other words, if parts are kept disparately in different parts of storage facilities, they can. In other words, it's a known missile. It's been broken up. It's been not disassembled, but not fully assembled.
Can they get the parts from Russia or China and then put them together in Iran?
I think not at this point. I don't think either one of those countries is delivering that to them. I think the Chinese did deliver 4 ships worth of a specific chemical that's used in the fueling, but I'm pretty sure if that starts to move inside the country, there will be a very large explosion. Because I think that would be taken out. I just think we're uncomfortable sinking a Chinese ship with it. So
will be what you're saying. The American military will just track it all the way from the ship, and as soon as it lands in Iran, gets transported by the trucks, it gets struck.
Yeah. It may already
can't be hidden, but can't they sneak it in through different flagships or go on the ground through?
Well, I think it's already pierside. I think there's reports that some of it's already pierside in Iran.
But can we say this is only the ones we know about?
Yeah, if you offload it onto a truck, I think we will say that truck is not Chinese, and it'll get a weapon.
But I agree, but what I mean, Admiral, is it possible that they've managed to ship more of it that we don't know about, or that's a very difficult thing to achieve?
Possible. I don't think it's likely. I think it's 4 ships we've identified publicly. Look, can we make a mistake on intelligence? You bet. I promise you, one happens during the hour-long taping of this, of this interview. We'll make an intelligence error, but the question is how serious is it? Is tactical, operational, strategic? But that would be a pretty strategic one if we missed a Chinese boat bringing precursor agents for ballistic missile fuel. But your broader point of they still have them underground, can marry them up with a launcher, pull the launcher above ground. Maybe the launcher gets waxed while they do this, but they get the weapon off. I mean, I think they consider that a win.
Yeah.
Now, your other point about Israel is really important. Israel is 100% practicing conservation, right? The conservation of their missile defense resources. I spent a lot of time in Ukraine. I already see this. Ukraine has been, which, by the way, Ukraine, for all the talk of Ukrainian patriots, I think everyone understands now they've shot less Patriot missiles in 3.5 years than we shot in 3.5 weeks. We and our
That's insane.
So, yeah, and on top of it, they've been at low numbers what they do is they're very careful. They don't defend the Ukrainians. When I watch them, they defend vital assets. They defend certain air bases or radars or military facilities or political facilities, or once in a while, certain energy grid parts. Broadly, if something's headed at like a church or a market or a residential building, it's likely going to be allowed to proceed and hit and kill civilians because they just have to conserve their missiles. So that's a great question you're asking. Is Israel at that point yet where they have to conserve missiles when they know it's going to hit a manned target? And remember, Israel already operates Iron Dome very uniquely. It, as you know, sorts out rockets and mortars and says, hey, that rocket and mortar is going to hit an empty field. I'm going to pass on that one. That's not how most American weapon systems work. They're like, oh, I got a good track. I'm going to hit it just in case. The Israelis have always been a little more accepting of risk. And so you're right. They're now on missile defense. Allegedly, I'm hearing the same thing you are, that they are, because of missile conservation, allowing some to come through and fall. And that can lead to civilian casualties.
Another question, and before going back to the technicalities, are you worried? Look, for people like myself that haven't been in combat, that haven't been monitoring wars for decades, it's only been a few years. For us, a lot of this may seem new. Now, we may look at historical examples to make comparisons, so we'll learn from the past, but it's very different when you experience one for the first time. I wasn't there in the Cold War and the Cuban Missile Crisis, for example. I was there in the same worries between Russia and Ukraine, and I saw the rhetoric there and the concerns there. And I'm seeing the talks now. I'm not talking about a nuclear war, just in general, the state of the world, because I worry that no one thought we'll be in a world war before World War I or even before World War II. That was kind of crazy talk back then, and then the world did descend into that state. And I look at where we are now, and I remember what I was telling people back after October 7th. A lot of people after October 7th, they would say, Mario, the Middle East would never look the same. This is going to be a regional war, etc. And I'm like, come on, no. And now we're looking at a reality where Iran is tiptoeing, depending what happens tonight, but it's tiptoeing into potentially becoming, and I said this yesterday, a proxy war between China, Russia, and the US. Already you said has delivered some of the chemicals. There's reports that Russia's delivering drones, and all while the Ukraine war is raging on, and China's indicating they're steadfast in their goal to invade Taiwan or reunify with Taiwan. So you put all these together and take a step back. Should one be worried, or this is just the world being the world as it has been for generations?
You're right to be worried. I think this is a unique look. First, you mentioned that basically an axis of authoritarians have kind of coalesced. I don't think that they're a deep alliance, Russia, China, North Korea, Iran, but they certainly assist each other. I mean, Ukraine is fighting all four. There's no doubt about it. I mean, Russia's the motive force right there, but North Korea has provided like 6 million rounds of artillery and mortars to Russia. That's why there's this 6-to-1 constant delta between 6 Russian rounds at least for every 1 Ukrainian response round, in artillery, because of the significant gift from North Korea. They also gave 10 or 12,000 troops who fought in Russian territory, in Kursk area, but still fought aggressively against the Ukrainians. Iran provided not just Shaheds, but the intellectual property to build Shahed factories, in which the Russians, to their credit, have evolved. The Russian Jiran drones are a lot better than the Shaheds they grew out of. I mean, there's rocket-powered ones. There's ones with better Starlink, digital, locational devices where some with miss drones that they can then attack other drones. It's a much different, much better weapon, but that provided initially by Iran, and then finally China's backstopping Russia's economy. So Ukraine's fighting all of them. Now you're asking, in Iran, are we fighting all of them? That's when you see them get a little sketchy. Like, do I think China's helping Iran? Yes, barely. Do I think Russia's helping Iran? Yes, the absolute minimum. Not significantly.
But it was the same. But it was the same with Ukraine. Germany infamously started with helmets, and then look where we are today. That's what worries me. It's not where we are, it's where we're heading.
That's a fair point, but that's years away. But your broader point of, should I be worried? I have a son in our military. I'm worried. I'm worried that there's a lot more combat going to happen, and I think that we have to be careful. I'm afraid your initial description of, we have people here who have not had to be in the military, maybe haven't had to do too much sacrifice, in looking at this. How about one of them being in charge of our country? And so I just think the president did not have a ton of the kind of traditional experience. Now, neither did President Obama. But I worry a little bit about the president kind of doing a lot of this by the seat of his pants. It's unusual, and it could get escalation management could become challenging.
There's a lot of people talking about Trump being influenced by the wrong people, and I've always been under the impression that the leader of the world's strongest military, the world's biggest democracy, the world's biggest economy, the world's biggest superpower, there's a system in place to ensure he gets all the information from all sides in an objective way without anyone misleading him. And there's checks and balances in place. But again, I never had the access you have or the knowledge you have. Are these concerns valid? Because then when people started saying it, especially in the interviews in the last few days, when we saw Trump's rhetoric pick up, or get extreme, really, not pick up, I remembered the Guardian article, which said that British intelligence officers considered Kushner and Witkoff Israeli assets. Now, I'm not the type of person that thinks Israel dictates what the US does. I think it's an oversimplification. I think that there's a lot of influence by Israel. True, I think it's hard to deny that. But this war is not about Israel. I could be wrong, but that's my position. Putting Israel aside, though, just the process to brief the president, is it flawed? Is it possible for someone or a group of people to mislead the president? And I'm talking about a president that still has it all there. I'm not talking about Biden, who in his later years, he kind of lost it.
No, fair enough. So first, Trump has flaws. There's a lot of things that make me uncomfortable or unhappy with him, but I do think he's his own man. First, I agree with you. He doesn't have a dementia issue. He's making these decisions. The question is he susceptible to the last person in the room saying something untoward or incorrect that drives his decision making cattywonk or in the wrong way? Yeah, I think there's some risk of that. I think Susie Wiles' job is to prevent that from happening, his chief of staff, to keep it so that he's getting that. I think John Radcliffe, the CIA director, works hard to continually, kind of put the pin back in the grenade every day, from people who come in the office and say things that aren't accurate. I don't think I'm unhappy with Witkoff. I think he's a terrible negotiator in Russia, Ukraine, just awful. But I've never thought to myself, he's an Israeli agent. There's probably a difference between he's someone the Israelis monitor closely, excessively, and that's what the British, espionage people are picking up on. That may well be true, but that doesn't make him an agent. I believe Witkoff and Kushner are American patriots in the sense of they're not selling out their country or anything like that. They're not anybody's agent. I just don't think they're particularly Witkoff. I don't think he's good at his job. That's a different issue.
No, I agree with you there. Interesting. So going back to the technicalities of what could happen next, what does the escalation ladder look like now with the rhetoric that we're seeing, with the decision? Obviously, no one knows. Can you try to read between the lines, everything that you see? What's your analysis of it all? Yeah. And people you speak to that served when you were serving.
So I think he's going to hit infrastructure. The next escalation is him saying, all right, you didn't concede to me. You didn't make an indication. Now, look, he also has misstated what's happening in these negotiations repeatedly, right? Said, oh, they've given this or made this, and like no one else involved in it. It's like, yeah, they've made a concession. Even his own team scrambles to kind of keep up with his description of events. So there is a small chance he takes an off-ramp and says, I've gotten the concession I need from them, which is a concession I never mentioned to you all before, but to which they've given me. I think it's more likely that he doubles down right here in an attempt to really drive them to actually make an actual concession. And doubling down means increasing your strike rate, your strike tempo, and the pain factor associated with your strikes. And the next pain factor is, along that kind of economic security, economic productivity level, justifying it, saying this economic productivity contributes to their war fighting machine. And then you get strikes that you have to review each one to make sure, and not with Anthropic, review it with a lawyer, right? Who helps you understand was these legitimate targets. I think Admiral Cooper will be very careful to make sure that he does that appropriately. My experience with him is that he's a very deliberate, thoughtful officer that will not violate the rules of law because the president asks him to. He'll execute this properly. Now, that may not be it might be that's what our lawyers say, that's what Brad Cooper says, and then the Iranians read it and say, bullshit. That was an attack. That was an attack on civilian critical infrastructure that was escalatory and demands us to take retribution against the only thing we can attack, which is the energy infrastructure of the Gulf GCC states. And then you see more damage like you saw 2 weeks ago to the Qatari LNG field.
Yeah, or even yesterday, there's a massive gas field in Saudi that got struck. I think it's one of the most damaging strikes on Saudi so far that happened last night. And that's what I was going to ask you about is the repercussions of Trump escalating. If Trump escalates, Iran doesn't seem like they're backing down if we look at their rhetoric. We don't know what's happening behind the scenes because there's like kind of two things happening. There's negotiations allegedly in the background, and front-facing is the information warfare. If Trump delivers on his threats and then Iran delivers on their threats, what happens to the Gulf? These are American allies, and they're not as defended as one would hope, or as Israel is.
So you just described it perfectly. Israel, the problem child right now are these long-range attack drones. You get them two ways. You get them with the F-16s, F-18s up in the air, F-15s carrying advanced precision kill weapon system, which is a cheap rocket, like a $25,000 rocket that strikes the Shahed. Fantastic system. Works great when you're attacking Israel and the Iranian drones have to fly 400 miles and the F-16s have to just get behind them and pick them off one by one. Sometimes, they did a couple launches at Israel where no drones got to the Israeli border. Bahrain and Qatar and Kuwait don't have that luxury. They're 80 miles. the launch, and the UAE and that stuff, and portions of Saudi Arabia. It all gets hit
Saudi,
almost
yeah.
immediately. Yeah. So they need the second part of drone defense, which is ground-based interceptors, which is what Ukraine has. And by the way, the U.S. is being rightly criticized for not adopting these weapon systems, knowing that the Iranians had this. Absolutely. Guys, not just me, a lot of us that work in Ukraine were pointing this out, that there appears to be a capability here, which we don't have, which we're on no timeline going to get. I wouldn't have started a war without fixing that. I'll also say the GCC states could turn on a TV and watch what was happening in Ukraine. They knew what was going on there, and these are fairly wealthy states that don't worry so much about, are there parts made in China? They don't worry so much about, is it in the U.S. link, talking to other weapon systems. They could have had this. They chose not to. Now, the good news,
very weird,
very unusual. Zelensky, to his credit, has showed up immediately, offering assistance to everyone, all 4 or 5 GCC states, plus U.S. forces. I think the GCC states are taking them up very aggressively on it. I think the U.S. forces are going to start to, because you need to have interceptor drones at your airfields, your radars, your command centers, your water desalination plants, your power generation stations, your hotels that look like big sales, right? I mean, you've got to protect yourself and protect your critical infrastructure against these kind of attacks. Because in this escalation model that's coming, if it happens the way you and I the way I just implied a few minutes ago, this stuff's coming back, and it's going to come back. We will see how many drones the Iranians have, because I think we'll see larger launches again, and there'll be damage.
Yeah, look, and we're talking about, adopting Ukrainian solutions. Zelensky was in the Gulf recently, met Saudi, met the UAE, got the even in Syria, got the royal treatment in Syria by President al-Shara. But we're talking about tonight. We're talking about tomorrow.
Stuff came a couple weeks ago. Stuff came a couple weeks ago.
Oh, really? But enough of it?
No.
That's what I mean. Not only not enough of it, because Ukraine has limited resources themselves. They're not going to give all their resources to the Gulf. Yeah. They might give them a strategic support and the ability to manufacture them, no?
No, I think initially strategic support and weapons. I think they have thousands they could spare. Thousands of these interceptors. Now they're going to need thousands, right? Because
they have the people that to fire them and that's
right.
To use them as well.
No, I agree. You're down to he's sending a couple hundred people to do that. Look, you and I, we could figure out how to fire this in about a day. I would feel comfortable. Look, I'd hope someone more senior more experienced than us was next to us, but you and I could figure this out. It is rocket science, but it's not rocket science. I mean, I think we could figure it out and make it happen. Just like you and I could figure out how to launch a Shahed drone in a day. These are not complex. You and I cannot figure out how to fly an F-35 in a day, but we can do those other ones. And so this is doable.
But we're not seeing them. But we're not seeing them used. That's my problem. Again, we're talking about tonight, tomorrow. Let's say it's going to take, best case scenario, 2 weeks before they're available to be used. Because right now the Gulf is being struck and being struck successfully. And we're just talking about drones here. We're not talking about missiles. Missiles are landing. In Saudi, the damage yesterday to the massive oil refinery, I forgot what it's called, Jabal something. Yeah. That was last night by a missile. We saw the video of the missile striking it. Now, Saudi government said it's just debris, but we saw the missile. There's that as well.
Yeah, so I agree with that. And look, their patriots and dads have to perform for the missiles. They have done better with missiles. Both UAE and Saudi have good track records over the last 6 weeks with missile defense. Doesn't mean none get through, but they've taken care of a lot. But the drones right now would get through at a very high percentage, not very high percentage, but a reasonable percentage, enough to justify Iran doing the attack and enough to respond to the U.S. escalation. So we've got to get those counter drone systems working. I think if drones were fired tonight against a vital asset that had a Ukrainian defense system, you'd see it fire. I think they've reached that point. I'd be surprised if they haven't reached that point at their most vital areas.
There's, as we wrap up, Admiral, there's a report that just came in by Barak David from Axios. Iran talks show glimmer of progress as Trump deadline looms. Do you think he will tackle? Again, you're avoiding speculating what could happen next, and
Yeah.
rightly so. But I know you have an opinion behind.
Look, I can't believe he's gone this long. So, you asked me who's he get taco. If you'd asked me that on week 1, I'd have said yes. Week 2, you know what I mean? So he hasn't. So he's gone longer here. Look, he's got beef. He's got real animosity with Iran. I don't know exactly what it is.
Does he? I don't know, because he literally said a few weeks ago, he's like, I don't mind working with religious leaders. I've worked with them before. I genuinely don't think he really cares. He cares just about the outcome. I could be wrong, obviously.
No, I think
I know it goes back decades. I know that as well.
I think he has something. I think he has something in the Wayback Machine that has him. Having said that, that can't justify a 6-week bombing campaign, right? You know what I mean? Like, old grudge about something I saw on TV in 1986 should not drive a 6-week bombing campaign. So I think this is him being legitimate, and so I'm hesitant to say he's going to taco out. And I think we have to prepare, the people who talk about this and get not just our public, but also, making sure that we're flowing the right forces, that we have the right stuff there, that we're working properly with the Ukrainians. I'd revert back to, when this is over and we investigate the errors the United States made militarily, not politically, there's going to be a lot politically, but militarily, one of the biggest errors is going to be how we could observe what was going on in Ukraine for 3 years with Shahed-like drones.
Yeah.
Understand that one of our principal adversaries was Iran, the designer of said Shahed drone, and we had no defense for it. I mean, what did you think they were going to do? Say, Marcus of Queensbury rules. You don't have any defense, we won't launch at it. I mean, it causes them to double down on the launches.
And the last topic I want to cover with you, Admiral, is the possibility of a nuclear strike, whether it's Israeli nuclear strike. I'll tell you my position in a second, but Israeli nuclear strike, where people smarter than me tell me, Mario, this is a real risk. I spoke to the Speaker of the Knesset yesterday, former Speaker of the Knesset, who said, Mario, no, actually, he said he doesn't believe it's a risk, so I apologize. But Tucker believes it's a risk. David Sachs believes it's a significant risk, and other analysts as well. That's an Israeli nuclear strike. Now, today, there's the Guardian report and Tucker's concerns about Trump using a nuclear weapon. And there's some reports and concerns as well, Israel, especially on the Israeli side, that Iran could develop some sort of dirty bomb and use that as well as a last resort if this progresses. Now, my stance is I don't think all 3 parties won't use a nuclear weapon unless they're in absolute desperation. If this escalates to ways we haven't taken into consideration yet. I just don't think any of them would use a nuclear weapon. But I've been wrong a lot in this war because I'm always too optimistic. So where do you stand on these 3 concerns?
So I'll take the 3, not quite the order. I'll take the U.S. one first and say, I just don't think that, even if this is going crappy for us, it's still not time to break out a nuclear weapon. I don't think it meets the metrics for using it. I get Tucker Carlson's disturbed with what the president's doing, and he's trying to, pull him away from where he's at. And so he talks about this nuclear thing. I just don't think he was going to use it, and I don't trust Tucker Carlson's judgment on that. Which gets to Israel, where I definitely don't trust Tucker Carlson's discussions of Israel or
what about David Sachs?
Okay. No, not him either. No, neither one of them are a legitimate analyst of Israel and a truth teller about Israel. So. Look, do I think Israel makes lots of mistakes? Yes. Do I think they're going to use a nuclear weapon against Iran without having one used against them first? No.
Agreed.
So then that leaves you with Iran. They don't have a weapon right now. They, how they could scrape together a dirty bomb, I'm not sure. We've rebelized the crap out of a lot of stuff again and again. And then a dirty bomb is a weird thing. It's a terrible, on the receiving end, there's a lot of cleanup and a lot of problems. I'm not 100% sure it's a game-changing. It would just cause the United States and Israel to say, okay, we're just going to take this to its natural conclusion. We're going to continue to hammer you till there's nothing left, which is hard with a population of 90 million people. This is not – one of the things people are missing here is just the size of the country. Iran is a fully developed economy for 90 million people.
Very educated.
Russia. Yeah.
So you don't think it's But you don't think they'll ever use a nuclear weapon? Not because they're the weaker party in this war.
Yeah.
If they're pushed enough into a corner, they won't use one.
again, they wouldn't have a nuclear weapon, but a dirty bomb.
A dirty bomb,
wouldn't.
yeah, not a nuclear
Of
bomb.
all the things you mentioned, I wouldn't take that one off the table. I would take all the other ones off the table.
That one concerns you the most.
Yeah, I mean,
what is the count? You said that for the US, it doesn't meet the metrics for the US to use a nuclear weapon.
Yeah, I mean,
again, I agree. I'm not an expert though. So what's the?
There's not an existential threat to the United States. You know, high gas prices because you did something stupid and couldn't get out of it is not an existential threat to the United States. So we just would not use the nuclear weapon. You know, we've established a standard of use that I think is the bar is way, way, way higher than where we're at.
Well, if Trump pulls out of this war, then, but if Trump pulls out of this war, okay, he walks away, because I made a post as well saying, look, Trump doesn't really need an off-ramp. He could just walk out. The rest of the world has to clean up the Strait of Hormuz. Correct. Israel has to sort out its own security. He left him in the 12-day war. He could just walk out of this. But if he does, and Iran decides to continue striking Israel for ideological reasons or to avenge the death of their supreme leader, whatever, to deter future attack, and Israel starts to run out of interceptors and they keep bombing them with thousands of missiles, wouldn't Israel fit that description?
Well, but before that would happen, we would re-enter and bomb heavily along with Israel. And we would probably shift our target sets to more counter value to hit, IRGC people in their homes, things like that, in a more aggressive effort. And you might even get to things like holding and seizing some things. I'm against that completely, but I could see us becoming overreactive if Israel got in that position, if they were continuing to be struck and they got in that, in a extremist position. I don't see Israel using a nuclear weapon there. I believe Israel has their nuclear weapons. I believe Israel has their nuclear weapons to defend against someone else using a nuclear weapon against them.
Admiral, I really enjoyed this conversation. I appreciate it. Look, the news is just coming in an insane way. You saw the news about Israel striking the bridges earlier today. Iran is being bombed pretty heavily now. The airport is being bombed. Iran struck the Gulf yesterday as well. So things may escalate even before the deadline, which to me indicate maybe the negotiations are ongoing and these are pressure tactics before we wrap. But it's been a really good conversation. I appreciate you joining the show and having that back and forth. We've got a new guest coming in, Mandana, who's very critical of the regime. She lives outside of Iran, but from a military perspective, the insight has been really helpful. And I'm sure you're going to stay up to watch on us early your time. You're in the States, I assume, so it's early your time to see the speech.
I'm in Taiwan.
Taiwan.
So I'm hoping. Yeah, I'm helping doing some training here for their military, and so I'm going to try to catch it.
Oh, you're in the middle. Hold on, you're in the middle of it now, Admiral. In Taiwan, we're talking about China's the threat in Taiwan. Is that? I know we're wrapping up, but is that threat real? Is that concerning them there?
So it's interesting. I think their senior leadership looks at what Trump did and kind of appreciates it. They understand there's a munitions issue that's a problem. We got to solve it, and there's a way for us to solve it. I don't we need munitions now. We need to produce them, but we have a program and an effort to get ourselves back on track.
Yeah.
But what they see is a president willing to take action against an authoritarian regime, and they were getting nervous near the end of the Biden administration and the Trump administration's first comments that they were no longer a primary issue. And an issue of great concern to the United States, and they need to be. Taiwan needs us, unlike any other country, even more than Israel. Taiwan needs the United States because no one will sell weapons to Taiwan except the United States. No one will be the first country to step in and support Taiwan against China.
No one dares.
So that's it. They only have us. This is a unique, and that doesn't feel good right now if you're a country to only have the United States because we're a little unpredictable. This attack, although unpredictable, did kind of validate the United States will take action when it feels like it's been pushed to the brink. So I think they like that. They are having trouble with LNG. They're very heavily dependent on liquefied natural gas, and they're not getting 30% of their LNG that usually comes from the Gulf states. So
and they've got the helium as well. They need for the microchips.
Yeah. But they got one other thing, cash. They're a damn rich country. They've been growing at 5
chips.
Yeah, because of the chips, they've been growing at 5 to 7% GDP for decades.
Wow.
So they're doing okay. But it is interesting to watch how they respond to it. And they do worry about China. But China also, last thing I'll say, Xi did fire He's fired 3/4 of his generals over the last 2 years, and more specifically, he's fired 7 of the 9 people on his decision-making body, leaving only himself and the officer that ratted out the other 7 officers. Right? I mean, that's not a it's
Ratted
political
them out for what?
for corruption, being an American spy.
I saw those reports. Do you really think they were?
No, he was not an American spy.
Okay.
I mean, I think what he did was he said, "We're not ready to fight America." That doesn't make you an American spy. It makes you an honest and an honest dealer.
Pragmatic.
Yeah, very pragmatic, and she did not appreciate it at that moment.
Interesting. Well, Admiral, I'd love to have you back. I'm sure Taiwan will be all over the news very soon. So I'd love to have that discussion with you. I didn't know you're there. Thank you for your time, sir.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. All right, everyone, we're going to have our new guest joining Mandana now. Mandana, how are you?
Hanging in there.
Where? I don't know if can you share? Sorry.
Yeah, I've got a new set of threats today, so hanging in there.
I was gonna ask. I don't know if you could share your location, because I know a lot of Iranians that are against the regime living abroad get a lot of threats.
Yeah, and yesterday I had a debate on an Indian news channel. There's a reporter. I have so much of regard for him because he doesn't really support any side, and he reports what's happening. So there was a debate, and there is a gentleman, an Indian mullah, sitting in Qom, and he was part of the debate. And the moment I joined the chat, I straight up questioned him, and I said, you're not even Iranian, and what you're saying is absolutely lie. And he left. He left the chat. And he said, I refuse to speak with this woman. And since yesterday, I've started getting like messages on my Instagram, private messages, and phone calls from Iran saying that watch your back. It doesn't matter where you are. We're going to find you. So.
Yeah. Welcome to the world of. I know you've been in that world for a while, but that's the world of politics. You get a lot of these empty threats, but never post the biggest, stupidest mistake people make, especially if you're with a loved one or a friend, is posting a story that shows your location. Always, whenever someone wants to post a story that's with me, I'm like, post it once we leave the location. But look, it's pleasure to speak to you for the first time, Mandana. There's a lot to talk about. Like I seem to have a love-hate relationship with all the monarchists or the diaspora, the Iranian diaspora, the people that are against the regime. In January, I was praised, getting so many nice messages because I was one of the most vocal voices against the regime. And I still am. I don't like the regime whatsoever. But since then, I was always, even during the protests, I'm like, look, I want the regime to fall. I want a democracy in Iran. I do not want military action for regime change because I know it almost always fails, especially if it doesn't involve boots on the ground. Even with boots on the ground, look at Syria, you look at Libya, Iraq, etc. So that was always my position. But I didn't get any slack for my position of non-interventionism. Now, because I'm critical of the war, I'm not a fan of the war. Some of the people that praised me in January are very upset right now because they want this military action. They want the regime gone, which I see to be a fair position considering what the regime has done historically, not only in January, but also a very risky position. So I'd love to get your thoughts. You've been covering this for a while. You've been very vocal about it. What's your position on it all?
Oh, well, I'm glad that you brought that up because even as an Iranian, as someone who's been active and vocal about what we want and what's happening inside Iran, and I've been active for many years, and what we are surprised and kind of scared of right now. I had friends or I knew people, they were alongside supporting the Iranians, right? And suddenly, the same group of people who were supporting us, they have given our information, our details of family and where we are, what we do to the regime. So, what I want to say, the reality is that this regime has been planting their seeds in other countries, outside of Iran, that there were people who, let's say, they're students or they're teachers or the doctors, and they live within the society of Iranians in the diaspora, right? And then suddenly now, those are the same people who are attacking a person like you. Example, see, as you correctly said, as a foreigner, as who's not Iranian, you have your point of view, right? And also your point of view could change. You could support the Iranian people, and maybe tomorrow you say, you know what, I don't want the war. I don't want innocent people die, or I don't want the economy to collapse because of the war, right? Because whatever reason you have. But then what happens? The people who are attacking you and they say, hey, why are you talking? Most of them are not even wanting the change. What they want is actually the regime sustains in Iran and just get a different version of regime. And the really difficult part for someone like me or other Iranians is that we are fighting one battle, which is the PR online. This regime is fighting online, and then the second one is people within us, Iranians within us, who are living amongst us, and then the third one is obviously friends and family who are stuck in Iran, and then there is a war. So we are actually fighting so many different wars, and the people who are attacking you and they say, you know, why not supporting the war, are the ones who they actually want the regime to stay. I mean, different format of the regime stay.
So what's your position? Where do you draw? I'm assuming you want the regime gone, but you also don't want the country to fail, to become another Syria, Iraq, because obviously it's the worst case scenario.
Yeah.
Where do you draw the line?
See, where I draw the line, we have crossed so many lines, to be honest, for
Yeah.
so many years. There is not even a river, there is this ocean of blood between the people of Iran and the regime. And let me answer your question this way. In the January, the phone calls that I used to get, I heard that from friends and family. Oh, did you know this person? She's executed. Do you know that person? We found her body. And I had a phone call. I had a phone call from an Iranian person, and he said, these are exact his words. He said, one night they called us, and I had to drive a truck. They put us on a gunpoint. They took our clothes, and they took the phones and everything. And I was just riding a truck because he works in a city center. And he says, when we reached the destination that we had, and then they asked us to come outside of the truck and make sure that the garbage, we thought it's garbage, but it wasn't garbage. It was bodies of women and men and children inside a truck, just dumping in some corner. So where I stand with the war and what's happening, the same people who used to call and talk about everyone is dying, and now the phone calls that I get, which is between like 1 minute or 2 minutes, is so expensive and it's not really accessible to normal people. They say they upset, they cry, and they say, I hope Trump or Israel, they're not going to negotiate and they're not going to stop this war, because if this regime stays, you've got a wounded animal. And a lot of points that we were talking about the regime, right? That how brutal they are and who they are and what they are. They've actually shown it in past 36 days in a war. The fact that the horror that they have created in a region, the fact that they have attacked the Muslim countries, right? So for me, where I stand, we have paid a price for so many years. We are ready and we are accepted. We have accepted that we will pay the price. It could be, yes, it could be more people losing their life. But again, I want to mention a phone call that I got. A gentleman said, I prefer a bomb to destroy me and my family rather than my daughter gets arrested and gets raped in the jail. I prefer to die with the bomb. So that's where Iranian people stand. And as far and to be honest, every day, I don't know how I live anymore. You know, because I'm either waiting to know my close ones are no more, or they've been harassed by the regime because I'm speaking up, or they were near a police station or a Basiji station or something, and they're not no more. But this is a price that we are ready to pay.
You remind me of the January days, like in times of war right now, where we're seeing Trump's rhetoric, and I'm going to ask you about his posts
Yeah,
in a second,
of course.
because they're just a whole other level. I think he's bluffing and he's negotiating, but we'll get there. But I think so too. I hope so.
Yeah.
But you look at the war now and my opposition to the war, but I sometimes forget my position in January and how much I despise the regime January, the atrocities they've committed. The numbers are anywhere from a few thousand, 9,000, which is already a massive number. 1,000 is a lot, all the way up to 40, 45,000, whatever it is. But either way, the number is massive. That's a regime that shut off the internet and massacred their own people. Now, there's a difference between a regime that's autocratic and a regime that is not only autocratic, but will kill till the end so they remain in power. So it's two different things. So I'm not saying that Iran should immediately transform into a democracy, but a regime that would put their people above ideology a foreign policy that's not as confrontational and violent. And number three is just not kill their own people to that extent. Now,
Yeah.
do you not worry though that I remember Assad, yeah, and when I was much younger then, I wasn't covering all this. I was a young
Yeah.
man, and I hated Assad, and I was watching the protesters, and then the same with Gaddafi. I was watching the protesters. I'm like, go America, support these protesters. Those two countries are. You go to anyone there, they're like, we hate Assad, but we want to go back to the old days because the country is just completely
Yeah.
destroyed. Does that
Yeah.
concern you that the other extreme? Because I'm sure you have a line. Like if someone said, Mananda, should they nuke Iran? You'd obviously say, no, of course not. So there's a line. I want to understand where that line is.
See, first of all, I don't think either Pakistan, US, or Israel, they're gonna nuke Iran.
I agree.
I don't think, that's as correctly as you said, we've seen it past few weeks, the bluff, the strange tweets, they're saying, oh, I'm gonna go west and he's going east. And that's not gonna be the situation in Iran. And to be honest, I wanna say it, and don't take me wrong, as an Iranian even, I'm very clear that Iran is the untapped market in many, many ways. Okay. So by knowing American policy and Trump, the way he's such a smart man, he's such a smart businessman, right? He will not allow it, even any other country, to come and nuke Iran. That's besides the conversation. But yes, where I drew the line is, again, I'm repeating myself, we have crossed so many lines. And what is happening in Iran right now, I had a video sent to my Instagram by a young man, and he introduced himself and he says, I used to work with the Sepah and the Basiji, and right now we have a group of 75 people. We drive for hours to a meeting point. We have gathered guns. Some of our actually trained in military. So we are trying to, the moment we have a chance, we're trying to take back like stations or the cities. So it's not like Iranians are sitting and waiting for Trump or Israel or anyone else to nuke us. But then what worries me right now is the fact that there are a group of Indians mullah, there is a group of Hamasis, there is a group of Hezbollah, there is a group of Houthis. They all have been stationed in Iran. That's what worries me, because I remember one of my friend who called me in January. She said, Mandana, I don't know, everyone was talking in Arabic. All these police, we could hear them. They're not Iranians. And another friend said, these people, because they're not Iranians, they're just killing everyone. That's what it worries me. And the problem is because the people who they don't want this regime are, let's say, 85%, and the rest who they want the regime are roughly 15%. Those guys, and alongside with these terrorist organization people who have taken a station in Iran, that's what worries me. The tweets of Israel or America, it doesn't really matter. We have a bigger fish to fry, to be honest. It's
But
and
what
and
if
also.
yeah, Mamda,
Sure.
what if I've got a lot of points, so I'm going to address them all, but what if
Sure.
he means it?
Please.
So I agree with you. I think Trump is bluffing. What if he
Yeah.
doesn't? Let's just use that as a hypothetical. What if he means it when he says a whole civilization will die tonight, never to be brought back again? Tuesday will be power plant day and bridge day, all wrapped up in one in Iran. There's nothing like it. What if he means those threats? Again, I don't think he does, but we need to consider that option as well.
Again, I don't want to even think about it. It breaks my heart. Like the moment you just even repeat this question, it gives me. I feel nauseous about even thinking about it, right? Because even as an Iranian, I want my country free from this regime. Even the thought of if he does it, it breaks my heart, and it's something that it's unimaginable, But then again, I want to mention one thing is that I feel Mr. Trump is buying time, because if you see in January where Iranians they asked for help and then he replied, he said the help is on the way, right? It took him to almost a month and a half to kind of start the war, right? So moving what do you call, the military moving people close on boots on the underground, is going to take time. What I feel, I could be wrong, and I hope I'm not wrong. What I feel like, he's buying time because he knows this regime. This is not a regime that is going to accept anything. And especially right now, they're wounded animal. And for them, as you know about the regime, these people are ready to die, ready to kill children, ready to do anything to stay in power. So what I feel like, he's just buying time. He's creating this mayhem for them, a confusion, and then he's gonna do something. And I feel like he's getting ready for something bigger. And maybe that's why he says tonight a lot of, a lot is gonna happen and a lot
So
is gonna change.
big. Well, he's saying that tonight a whole civilization will die. So a whole civilization will die tonight. And you said to me, Mario, like, it gives me chills, makes me nauseous thinking about this. I'll give you. And you said maybe Israel and the US are bluffing in their rhetoric. Well, I said that about Israel when it came to Lebanon. So a lot of people, the fringe minority, the radical minority, were saying with Lebanon, it belongs to part of Israel, greater Israel theory. I'm like, look, guys, this is a small minority. I don't think they mean it. Well, now the defense minister, a few days ago, he put out a statement saying, so in Lebanon, 20% of the population has already been displaced. Over 2,000 people died, so half as many as in Iran. So the country is being destroyed as well. And the defense minister said a few days ago, he said the 20% of Lebanese people that evacuated the south are not allowed to return home even after the war ends. That was the defense minister as official statement. And then he also said the towns on the border are going to be destroyed just like in Gaza. So then I was really bothered by that day, because I've been saying for a while, guys, I don't think Israel will do the same to Lebanon as they did with Palestine. I genuinely believe it's just about Hezbollah. But then when the defense minister says something like this, I'm like, maybe I should have taken him seriously. Maybe those concerns are serious. So if we go to Iran, do you think Trump really cares about the Iranian people? He cares about the US, and he does whatever's better for the US. If the regime gives him access to the energy, he's like, you know what? I'll just work with them. Just like I'm working with the same regime in Venezuela. Not much has changed in the way they treat people, and just works with the Iranian regime that's there now.
We know Trump plays politics, and in politics, you care about your own benefits. You look for your own agenda, right? With Trump, what I feel is that, first of all, when he addressed the nation, that says that, oh, the entire nation is going to be wiped out tonight, right? Then again, the next statement, he actually says, I mean the regime. So he knows the difference between the regime and the Iranians, and he has kept repeating that. Or even in Israel, the IDF and a lot of official platform of Israel, they keep writing and they keep telling the Iranians, make sure that you're going to take shelter, make sure you're not using the train station, which today also they announced it, and they write those messages in Farsi. And we know it that the kind of intel that Israel and America they have right now in Iran, we don't see it, but a lot of information, a lot of incident has happened. I don't want to say that they don't care about Iranians,
but
and
they're not requesting, Mandana, but that I just kind of add one more context. They're not in the peace negotiations. They're not requesting a change of regime, and they're not requesting any rights for the people, any release of political prisoners. All they're requesting is the opening of the Strait of Hormuz, nuclear program, etc. The Iranian people are none of the points that's being presented by the US or by the US, not Israel.
Also, it could be what I think it could be the fact that America and Israel, they know that first of all, they're not going to open the Hormuz, the Strait of Hormuz, and then the second thing, they're not going to give. And by the way, one of the official give announcement, they said the entire project, the proxy and whatever they have built, it's like our pride. We will die, but we will not give it to anyone, and we will not stop. This is like our child. This is our treasure. So the Israel and America, they know that Iranian regime is not going to give up. And to be honest, from what I know from inside, the negotiation is not even happening, because if you look at it, who's negotiating with them? Everyone has died. Who's negotiating? Who's this imaginary person that Trump or Israel or anyone, or as a matter of fact, Pakistan? I had a debate a week ago while the whole news came out from Pakistan that Pakistan is negotiating, and we had someone from the ground in Pakistan, and he just says, "Oh, diplomacy. We're talking diplomacy." And then the next few hours, Iranian regime comes and says, "Oh no, we're not talking to anyone." So yes, there there is talks behind the doors, and one hope that I have, which has been a conversation within Iranians, we are thinking that maybe the conversation is also with Reza Shah Pahlavi. Maybe actually Trump is buying time to get the boots on the ground and then actually place him back to the country. Maybe that's a way, and that's a hopeful way that we are talking about it. It sounds ridiculous in a situation that Trump says that I'm going to destroy the entire nation, but
I'll
if you
tell
would
you my
have,
thoughts here.
yeah,
I'll tell you my
so,
thoughts. First, I want to start with the context. I
yeah,
applaud your fight and your cause and your courage. Number
yeah,
two
thank
is
you.
I've made statements before. I said the only reason I would, when there was the build up and everyone was talking, will there be war? Will there be war? My position was, if it's a limited strike with the goal
Yeah,
of regime change, then I support it. If Trump is bombing Iran for political gain or strategic gain, I think it's because of the Strait of Hormuz, to have more control of the energy market, to pressure China. That's what I think is the reason for the war. Then I'm completely against it, because that's using the Iranian people in order to achieve objectives for the sake of the US. Now, every analyst I've spoken to so far, and I've spoken to a lot of people, politicians, non-politicians, experts, analysts, some
sure.
people that hate the US, hate Trump,
Yeah,
believe he's the devil, others that think Trump is the best president in the world and the regime is, they're all terrorists.
yeah,
Not one person, I've also interviewed Pahlavi, but that was before the war. Not one person so far in my interviews and also behind the scenes in the discussions is bringing up Reza Pahlavi. Just like the opposition leader who I almost interviewed, Maria Machado, I think, Machado.
yeah,
No one thought she didn't take power. No one thought she'll take power. I know you want Reza Pahlavi to take power, and I think Reza Pahlavi's heart is in the right place. He doesn't have enough support in Iran. You might disagree. I don't have the numbers. He
no,
wants
correct.
democracy in Iran, and I think that's ideal. I just there is no one that gave me that scenario as a plausible scenario in any of my discussions. Even those that believe Trump should keep bombing Iran, the people that believe Trump should bomb Iran, the reason they give is no one thinks it's for the Iranian people. Everyone believes it's because of where we are now and what Trump is saying and the multi-point plan, all the various plans that are being presented. Everyone believes it's. Some people think it's for Israel. Most people believe it's for the Strait of Hormuz. And I believe he made a mistake in order to get control of the Strait of Hormuz. But do you really believe that Reza Pahlavi could be someone that Trump has in mind?
Yes,
What do you
100,
hope?
100.
Okay.
No, I hope, and I don't believe that he's. See, again, with Mr. Trump, I rather not waste my breath and even like think about it. I rather keep it in my head as a hopeful thinking, and by knowing the numbers and the fact within Iranian diaspora and people in Iran, is the fact that let me take you a little bit back. In 2009, 2000, the Green Movement, in Mahsa Amini, in all the past few years, everything that has happened, as an Iranian, we were always talking about we don't want this, and we have a problem with the hijab, we have a problem with the universities, and so on, so right. There was never a leader. People were coming to the streets and they were saying that we don't want this. But then in January, what happened? Actually, it's not in January. It's around end November. My friends, they were saying that, listen, there is something is gonna, something big is gonna happen in Iran, and I don't know where this is coming. Everyone is talking about the Shah coming back, and we don't want the regime. And then boom. 8th of January and 9th of January, millions of Iranians, they went to the street, and the videos that is coming, they're only chanting Reza Shah Pahlavi. The Pahlavi has to come back, right? So that was the first time, and then suddenly, and by the way, I wasn't the support of Shah Pahlavi. I wasn't, and
Oh.
when I wasn't. I've met them in few like European countries, but I wasn't even excited enough to go and say hi. I was very and in January, when the videos came, obviously we were worried about our families and everything else. But when the videos came and I heard it, and I was like, what's going on? Why everyone is just chanting Reza Shah Pahlavi? So I went and I studied. I saw all his interviews. I researched about what he's been doing for past so many years, and the plan that he has for the future Iran, and the team that he has. So I studied it, and in my head I was like, wow, in in an ideologic world, if he comes, It's exactly what Iranians they've been wanting. First, and a democracy. Second, keep your religion besides of our rights, women's right,
Yeah.
and bringing so much of the money and the talent and the Iranian people who are living outside of Iran and building the country back again. So and also it's the first time, surprisingly, I'm surprised as well. I'm so proud of my people. It's the first time that we're standing under one flag and we are chanting one name, Reza Shah Pahlavi. And if the world they don't want to see it, if they still want to say that, oh, he's not going to get our word. I don't think Iranians they really are worried about that, because right now what we are worried about is going back to our country. And he has repeated again and again, he's the bridge. He's the bridge, and he has said, we'll do a voting and then you decide. And if you want to vote me out, I have no problem. And a lot of people trying to corner him and say, oh, you want to
Yeah.
go back and be a king in Iran, and he multiple time has said no, and
No,
that's
he
not the
said,
case.
I asked him, yeah, I asked him directly in the
Hmm.
interview. I said, Reza, like, are you going to be, do you really want, are you like talking about democracy,
Yeah,
to trick people into you gaining power and then maintaining that power? Because that happens
yeah,
a lot. He was
yeah,
very strict. He's like, my
yeah,
goal is not to continue being the leader of
yeah,
Iran. My goal is to begin
yeah,
the process of Iran
yeah.
going back to a democracy,
Yeah.
similar to what was
Oh, and
under
by
a
the way,
president.
sorry
No,
to
sir, go
cut
ahead.
you. I just wanna add something. I had a very interesting call a month ago from Turkey, from Istanbul, and this gentleman, I've known the family for many years in Iran, and they are Bazaris, the bazaar of Iran,
Mm,
and they are one of the very prominent family in Iran, and they are in a detergent industry in Iran, and they're one of the family, even by having so much of sanction in the country, and they weren't supporting of regime or anyone. They were making their money. They made sure that the government gets whatever they want. And this gentleman actually got in touch with me and sent me a list of 40 questions. And in this list, first of all, he said, listen, I have a lot of respect for you and the cause that you're supporting, but we had a meeting amongst us, and these are like a prominent people from Iran. We had a meeting, and these are the questions that we have from Reza Shah Pahlavi and his team. And we would like to know that tomorrow, if he's gonna come back, because what we're hearing from people here, they really want him. So we want to understand where we're standing. That says a lot
mm.
to me. That says a lot, that okay, even people like them are kind of like, probably if this regime goes, he's the only choice, and people are
Yeah,
wanting to come back.
there's no other alternative. It's important to know that the regime's done a really good job. The Iranian government, the Iranian regime, whatever you want to call it, they've done a really good job
Yeah,
at getting rid of any opposition. Um,
yeah,
I'm actually curious, moving away from
sure,
politics, Mandana, is
sure.
what's your story? I don't know your story. When did you leave Iran? How long? When was actually first, very briefly, before we go into your full story, when was the last time you were in Iran?
I was in Iran almost 11 years ago, and I knew
Oh
that's my
wow.
last time because I did a project with an a TV channel. So let me tell you why I knew that it's my last time. Someone got in touch with me and they said, we found out that you are Iranian, we thought that you're Indian, and with your Iranian passport you yeah, crazy, right? Yeah, I know. And we have done a little bit of a study about your work, because I was an international model, and I was just like, I put my head down after I left Iran and I just worked, and I didn't want to do anything with that regime. I became this numb person that, okay, I am Iranian, but I don't want to talk about Iran. And so I put my head down and I worked for so many years, and I came to India. I was a model, international model. Then I became an actress and I became famous. And when I became famous, people are like, "Oh, hold on a second, she's Iranian. She has an Iranian passport. How she's been around? How does she, Because as a model and holding an Iranian passport, you cannot get visa. You cannot be an international known face. And I've done that before, because the visa process, example for Hong Kong, is very difficult with Iranian passport. Going to US with Iranian passport as a model, it's very difficult. They just refuse. And so this channel comes to me and say, we want to do an interview. And but the thing is, if you do an interview with us, we'll come to India. We're making this documentary video, whatever. And but you're gonna be banned, because if you work with us, we are one of the, like, on top of the list of the government, that if you work with us, you're banned. And I spoke to a few friends in Iran, and they said, Mandana, to be honest, you never wanted to come back to Iran. And, in 12 years that you have left, you've just visited once. But if your story comes out, a lot of people are going to get motivated by it. Just share your story. So anyway, I do the interview. They come to India, they shoot it. I had 3 days to go back to Iran. I went back for 3 days, and that was my last time. Yeah, in Iran.
When you were in Iran, did you always have to wear your hijab when you left the house?
Yeah, I'm born in an Islamic, very strict Muslim family. So I was actually wearing chador and hijab until I was 10 years, like fully. You could only see my face. I've been forced to practice Islam, and that was side of my father's side. And the reason I lost connection with my family after I left Iran, because they weren't agree with my lifestyle, and I was a kafir. I'm sure you know what is the meaning of kafir. And
Like an
kafir,
infidel, someone that's against the
yeah,
like does things that are wrong in the
yeah,
religion.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah, correct. Yeah. So I'm kafir, and I should be shamed, I should be stoned, I should be killed, and they don't want to do anything with me. So I come from that
Who's that?
background.
Sorry, your family that was the mindset
Yeah,
of your family? No,
yeah, of my father. My father. Yeah.
that disgusts me. So that bothers me in ways you cannot imagine. By the way, when a family
Mm.
member puts religion above their own family members,
Yeah.
that drives me so insane. But I want to move away from this because I get too emotional. Just going
Yeah.
back to Iran, though, I do
Yeah.
understand. I've seen videos. Some people have the perception that everyone in Iran is like, they have to cover the shadura is the one
Yeah.
that covers the whole, like niqab, or everyone has to wear
Yeah.
the hijab, like very, very strict.
Mhm.
But from what I understand in videos that I've seen, I've never been to Iran. I've heard it's a beautiful country, but
Mhm. It
political
is.
reasons I can't go. But now there's a war. But in malls and stuff in Tehran, in the more liberal cities, there are people
Yeah.
that do walk without a hijab, correct? It's not as extreme
Yeah.
as some people in the West believe, correct?
Yeah, correct. So we have something called magnae. So magnae is usually it's a longer scarf, but it has this like your face is not fully covered. So it has this like a shape. So you just like put it on, and that's magnae,
Mhm.
which is usually for schools and university. That's a uniform for universities. Outside, we have just a normal scarf that we just put it on our head. So
Mm.
let's say 6 years ago or 7 years ago, the morality police was really bad. I've gone to jail because of my hijab when I was in Iran. I've been arrested for it. I've seen my friends getting lashes because of hijab.
Jesus.
But the thing is, after Mahsa Amini, the government, the regime, they saw how people are so unhappy. So a lot of people refuse to wear it. And one of the conversation that the regime has right now, and a lot of people who supports the regime and say, oh, look at it. Now, you can wear whatever you want. But the reality is, if they want to, and if they know you are in a certain locations or you are in certain areas, they can still arrest you, they can put you in jail, and they can even give you execution order if they want to. And
Mm.
a lot of people, they try to shift the conversation from saying that, oh, the regime is giving you so much of freedom, look at it, it looks like another European country. But the reality is, you might be seeing these videos that people are actually going to cafes, and
But you
it's
don't see the other side, yeah.
you don't see the other side. Even by the way, yeah, sure.
No, I was sorry to
Yeah, go
interrupt
ahead.
you. I was gonna ask, like, because I was gonna get the context before the war. But
Yeah.
do you still speak to people in Iran now? How's life like there now? I was speaking to a journalist that was there a week ago. I shouldn't forget Dimitri. He was there a week
Yeah.
ago doing a tour of
Yeah.
Iran. He's very critical of the U.S. government and sympathetic to
Yeah.
the Iranian regime. But he did a tour. He told me about the destruction. Can you tell me the state of things in Iran? The Iranians you speak to, not only the ones you speak to,
Yeah.
just a general
Yeah.
consensus, because we are hearing a lot about Iranians rallying behind the flag because they hate the regime. But when you have
Yeah.
another country bombing them and threatening to bomb the schools, not the schools, bombing a school, but threatening to bomb the bridges, bomb the country back to the Stone Ages, that turns people that are even critical of the regime, that type of rhetoric, turns them to
Yeah.
support the regime against a common enemy.
Yeah. Okay. So there are a few things happening in Iran right now. Under internet blackout, or the fact that if they even can get access to any SIM card or buy internet, it's super expensive, so they can't do it. But there is one thing is still working. In their phone, they get messages. They get messages from the government. If you don't come and support on the rally of so and so date, you're gonna be arrested. If you don't come to the
Really?
masjid, which is yeah. These are the messages. So they don't have internal internet or access to anything. They cannot call outside. We cannot call them. There is no internet, but there are messages coming to them saying that you have to join the rally. We get you money. We give you money. We give you this. We give you that. And even tonight, I think a few hours ago, the state TV, they announced that children, moms and dad, brings your kids, bring the whole family and stay in front of the areas that the Trump has said, I'm going to bomb them. Okay. And the rallies that you're talking about, the videos you're talking about, imagine you're going to keep the country under internet blackout. You have to create a fear by Iraqis, Houthis, Indians going there and shouting and screaming and creating a fear, and singing Arabic songs and creating this environment which is so fearful, and showing that online, saying that, see, we have so much of supporters, and keeping the other millions people quiet. Obviously that number is going to look massive. That number is going to look like, oh, everyone is supporting the Iranian regime. Because if they are winning, if they have so much of supporter, why the internet blackout? And by the way, last night I had in that debate, the mullah, the Indian mullah who was on the debate. I asked him the same thing. I said, okay, fine, I agree with you. I agree with you that Iranians, everyone in Iran, millions of Iranians, they support the regime. Can you please open the internet? Because I want to talk to all of them. As an
Yeah.
Iranian, I want to say, guys, like, what's going on? You went to the street in January, millions were killed, and now everyone is supporting the Iranian regime. And another interesting fact is the PR and the propaganda which online is happening. The videos are coming out. If you just look closely, if you in a frame, if you're seeing like 20 people or 30 people, from that 30, 20 people, uh, 28 or 27 of them Iraqi and Afghanis. They're not even Iranian. They're not even Iranian.
Let's go through just a quick update on the news
Sure.
as well, because I think you'll appreciate knowing what's happening, Mandana, as this is your country. So Iran just told Pakistan they still have 15,000 missiles and 45,000 drones left in stock. So that just happened a few minutes ago. The Qatari foreign minister said, we have been warning since 2023, if escalation left unchecked, it will get us into a situation where it cannot be controlled. And we are very close to that point. There are no winners in this continuation of this war, only losers. I think that was this morning or last night. A lot of members of Congress are standing up to Trump's threats. They want to take away his ability to launch a nuclear weapon. I think this is more political than anything. It's just all theatrics. We are seeing bombing of Tehran right now. You saw the bridges and the railway stations were bombed today. You think that's okay? Actually, what's your stance? Do you think that's okay if their goal is regime change, or these are lines that shouldn't be crossed?
It's not a line. By knowing that Israel and Iranians inside, whoever had got the internet, there are images being shared. What they're doing right now, they actually putting humans, and they're using humans as a shield, the human shields. And not only that, they're actually creating these camps only in schools, in hospitals, and in the places like that, because they know what America and Israel has planned for them. And if something is getting bombed right now, I know why it's getting, because this regime actually has put human. It's a dirty game.
It is a dirty tactic. Yeah, what the regime did is ask people, for people listening, is ask people to go form. I think they've even asked kids. I can't remember last night if I saw it, but they did ask people. They've asked kids as well.
Right.
Yes.
Yes.
So they asked people and kids, like, just for people listening. I'm very critical of the war, the way Trump is handling. I think it's all a mistake. But I'm even more critical of the regime. I have been since January. That's my stance. And you can be critical of both. Just people love to put people in buckets. You're in that bucket or that bucket, and I refuse to be in a bucket. Now, the strategy they did is they've called for people to form human chains as a human shield. They didn't say the word human shields, but form a chain around what? Power plants and bridges.
Correct.
Exactly the things that the US is planning to target.
Correct.
So this is
my debate. And my debate with people who they come to me and they say, oh, America and Israel, they attack his school and 170 people, they died. And I say, okay, sure. If they've done that and you're saying that the regime supports its own people, why the regime is asking the kids right now join the army? Do you think that's right? Do you think that's
I saw that.
correct?
That was surprising to me. That was really
And
surprising to me.
people are still debating, and one of the official has said, oh, we want to become a martyr, we are dying for our land, and if you're going to die in these attacks, it's our pride. This is a regime that we are talking about here. This regime will go to any extent to stay in power.
Yeah, there's a report here that came in as well. The King Fahd Causeway, which is the only road between Saudi and Bahrain, has just shut down because of Iranian strikes. Now, I don't know if the strikes struck the causeway or the Iranian strikes in general led to the causeway being shut. One causeway, 2 critical U.S. military hubs, and 0 traffic right before 8 p.m. So this is, I think, preparations for the escalation tonight. They've asked the causeway to be shut. Israel has issued an urgent warning for vessels off southern Lebanon between. So actually on Israel, do you trust Israel?
Do I trust as a government or as what?
Do you trust that they care about Iranian people?
I tell you my own experience, it changed my life. Last year I went to Israel. It was one of my most amazing trip of my life. And so when I went to Israel, I had a lot of issues before with Israel, and but one thing I didn't understand, why everyone hates Israel so much, why there is this narrative of Jews, like they're so hated, and you don't hear much of them actually fighting that narrative, right? Until I went to Israel. When I went to Israel, I've met so many Iranians. I've met so many Iranians which they left in Shah time or many years ago, and I have two different opinion on Israel and Israelian. I think Israelian, I love them so much. The country is so vibrant. I love the food. I love the people. And they're very similar to Iranians. Surprisingly, I was surprised because in school, especially in my school, I've gone to Islamic school. So in our school, actually, I've been taught to hate Israel. I've been taught to hate America, and we had actually like classes to explain. And once when I asked who's Israel, I got punished for it because I didn't understand. I didn't understand who's this Israel that we hate so much. And about the Israeli government, I think what they've done, supporting their citizen and standing up for the citizen, I think is commendable. And in the war situation, I tell you one thing, I do interior design now. I've changed my profession completely. And one of the very interesting I found out in Tel Aviv is that when you're building anything, if it could be a house or a villa or a compound, the first thing that it has to get permission is your shelter. It has to be in a certain, there is like rules and regulation for it. How I look at it, because I've lived in different countries, and I've lived in India, I've lived in Malaysia, I've lived in different countries. So the way the government take care of its own people, the way the construction and the way the whole city is been taking care of their citizens so much, that's what I like about them. The rest of stuff, their policy and their political actions that they do with other countries, I don't really know. And also, like, when I think about it, like my personal opinion is like, okay, if so many people, they hate me so much, I'm just going to keep doing what I'm doing. And what you see in media and what you see in Israel, it's two different things, clashing so much. And there is this um unbalance. There's this strange narrative about Jews, and there's this hatred,
Oh,
like
the
everything
Jews.
happens
I
in the
think
world.
the Jews, just to put that aside, anyone that mixes Jews and Israelis is just ignorant. So that's number one. Number two, you've made an important distinction: Israel versus Israelis. Now, Israel's a beautiful
Yeah,
country. I've met Israelis around the
yeah,
world. Israel's a
yeah,
democracy. They party hard.
yeah,
They have fun. They're
yeah,
incredible people. Very
mm,
good people. However, the Israeli foreign policy, I'm so upset what happened in Gaza, the way they treated the whole two-state solution issue. And in Lebanon, I was very balanced. I was like, look, Hezbollah keeps attacking them. They need to get rid of Hezbollah. But once the statement I
yeah,
told you about earlier by the defense
yes,
minister about turning the region to like Gaza, and then not allowing 620,000 Lebanese people, 20% of the population, to return home after the war ends, I'm like, this is too extreme. Even people that are very hawkish, that are Israeli or former IDF members like Jonathan Conricus, he even thought the second point was too extreme. So it's an important distinction. Now, the reason I asked that question is I worry that Israel's goal is not the Iranian people. If Israel's goal is the people of a country, they wouldn't be bombing Syria right now. Because Syria, you might hate the leader, but the leader is trying to bring the country together. Lebanon, you wouldn't ask 620,000 people to wipe out churches and houses and villages, completely wipe them out. You'll destroy Hezbollah, fight Hezbollah.
Yeah.
And my worry is, rightly so, the leader of the Israeli people, his mission is the Israeli people. The leader of the US, Trump, is America first. So my worry is that putting their own country's interests, not the Iranian people. He's the prime minister of Israel, not Iran. Trump is the president of the US, not Iran. And my biggest worry since January is the people on the streets for a good cause are going to be used for a cause that benefits another country and not the Iranian people. That is my big concern.
But also, like, the reason I don't have a solid opinion about Israeli government and their policy, I tell you what it is. Because of the recent, the war and everything else happened, and after my trip also to Israel, there used to be these like messages or comments I used to hear from people that saying that, oh, your war with your country's war with Israel has been there for many years. I didn't understand it, so I've been reading about it a lot. And what I'm understanding now, and I haven't firm and a complete on a bold word opinion on it.
I respect the fact that most people like to have strict opinions. I respect the fact that you're still making an opinion, which I respect.
Yeah, so I'm middle of like making my opinion, because when you track the money, when you track a lot of incident that has happened, as you currently say, in Lebanon, in Gaza, and Palestine, and all of that, right? When now I'm talking with few people in Iran, when we're tracking the money and the numbers and the news, right? There is this very interesting chain, right? Where everywhere that we reach another country in the region, Iran is part of it. Iran has supported somehow, right? So what I think, and again, I'm saying that I haven't firm 100% opinion on it, is that for Israel and America, they know if this regime goes, right, a lot of the region situation is going to kind of like become 100%. A little bit easier, because they're not going to have a funding.
No, Mandana, you're right. Like, look at Israel and the Gulf. They travel between the two countries. A lot of Israelis in where I live, Dubai. They do business together. They're normalizing relations. Saudi's heading in that direction. So no, if countries are not hostile to Israel, Israel won't be hostile to them. So absolutely, the regime can take responsibility for Israel being hostile to Iran. My worry is not that. My worry is not like Israel is the aggressor and Iran is innocent. No freaking way.
So that was my second point about the people. The people. So now
exactly.
Back to the
My worry is that the Israel will do whatever it takes to get rid of the regime, even if it means destroying Iran as a country and turning it into a Syria. That's my worry.
And okay, so the second point is the people. Iranian people, even by having so much of sanction and having problem with the regime and a lot of problems that they have, the education rate, the numbers are so high. A girl and a boy, they study so hard to get out of the country, to get scholarship in different countries, right? Israel and America, they know. Iranian people are super intelligent. They're very good at what they're doing. Imagine if this regime goes in Gulf, in this region, the same Iranians that they've gone out of Iran and they've been part of like massive companies, they're CEOs and surgeons and so on. So imagine those people can come back. And that's why, again, I go back to my first point that I don't think Israel or America, they're going to nuke Iran. Because again and again, even in those...
I don't think they'll nuke, just to be clear. I don't think it's out of the question in terms of nuking Iran. Some people believe they could. I believe it's out of the question. It's more turning Iran into Syria. Syria was not nuked, but Syria is now a failed state and no one returns to it. Lebanon is at that edge. And our worry is like, if they can get rid of the regime in a few strikes and that's it, Trump wanted to do, everyone thought he wanted, or everyone says he thought this operation would last 4 days. That's the ideal scenario. But if they decide that like, we're going to go all the way, if the regime does not just give up in the next couple of months, all the way means Iran as a country, the beautiful institutions, the beautiful people will just leave. Syria, Lebanon are a perfect example. To a more extreme scenario is Palestine. And just on that point, I'll let you respond. Also, I want to ask a question. What about Mossad's operations in Iran? Everyone's talking about it. It's no secret There's talks about
It's not
members of the Iranian, exactly, citizens. Iranian citizens are sharing locations for the Israelis to strike besieged checkpoints with drones. Can you tell me more about this? How extensive is their presence, and how much damage are they causing within Iran?
So basically, to answer your first question is that Iran is not Syria or Iraq or any other countries. Iranians, a massive number of Iranians, they don't want this regime, and they showed it in January as well, right?
Yeah.
So let's say if tomorrow the boots gonna be on ground, right? There is a massive chance there is gonna be millions Iranians. They're gonna help Mossad, America, or whoever is going to walk it, right? That's the first thing first. Second thing, talking about the Mossad operation in Iran, which is not a secret to anyone anymore. I've received a lot of videos and messages saying that, hey, listen, can you share this location with the Mossads or whoever you can? Like I've done it. I've been doing it, and there is a group of us. There's a group of Iranians that we get all this information, and to be honest, these people who are sending us this information are the people who probably bought the internet somehow, and they just send like pictures and images. And the thing is, the regime, the PR and the propaganda that they're selling right now, it actually shows that they are strong, they're doing negotiation, there is all this talks happening, but the inner reality of the ground is not. Because if you look at it in Tehran, 99% of the Sepah and the entire instruction of this regime has been destroyed. Everyone has died. If you would have asked me 2 months ago or 3 months ago, Khamenei is going to be dead, I would be like, oh my God, that guy is not going to die. But as we speak today, the reason the fact that Mossad has been doing an operation in Iran and the regime has been hit so hard, it's just matter of the fact, and they have the support of Iranians, millions of Iranians.
Can I ask you another question?
Sure,
and I'm going to give you just an update in terms of news. So,
for sure,
Israel is, as we know, is striking a lot of railway stations, and also the rails as well throughout the capital, striking the logistical infrastructure. Axios reported, as we saw earlier, the last proposal we got, according to a US official, the last proposal we got wasn't really what we wanted, but it was a lot better than we expected. Senator Ron Johnson just said, quote, "I am hoping and praying that that everything he's saying is a bluster. I do not want to see us starting to blow up civilian infrastructure. I do not want to see that. We are not at war with the Iranian people." That was Senator Ron Johnson, who I'm actually going to ping him for an interview. It's been a while I haven't interviewed him, to have him on the show. And we also know that, as we said earlier, Iran did tell Pakistan it still has 15,000 missiles and 45,000 drones left in stock. There's more updates coming in almost by the minute, which I'll read out in a second.
Sure.
But I have another question for you. You talked about Khamenei.
Sure.
And I remember I was Col.Karen, who'll be coming on the show in about 20 minutes.
Sure.
We were talking about this in how significant the death of Khamenei was, and Mujtaba as a more hardline supreme leader. Two questions. Number one is, I'll put in three questions actually, and you can answer each one. Number one is, what was your reaction when you heard Khamenei was dead? Ali Khamenei. What was your reaction to people in Iran? How big of an event was it? Actually, answer that one first before I ask the other two.
Yeah. Well, that day I got a death threat and I was really upset. So I got a phone call from a family member, and this person was crying and laughing at the same time. And I thought something has happened. I was like, what's going on? And then this person said, "You haven't heard? Khamenei is dead." And my phone just dropped, and I started crying, and I picked up my phone and I was laughing, and there was just so much of emotion, because what the pain that we've gone through because of this person, I don't want to give bad words, it's beyond understanding. It has they broke something within us that we might be alive. I might be sitting here and fighting. They broke something in Iranians that no one could have ever done. We are a nation that we are so strong. So there was a lot of happiness, there was a lot of sadness, there was a lot of disbelief, and I was dancing. I literally danced. I got really drunk with my friends, and while I was crying, I put this song that I'm going to Tehran, and I was just crying and I was dancing, and it was just a lot of emotions, because it was, if you would have asked me, I would not believe it that he's going to be dead in like an hour of the beginning of the war.
What about when his son was appointed, someone who's considered more hardline? What did you feel then?
Well,
And do you
his
think this
son,
the assassinate? Would you say the assassination backfired in a way?
it did not backfire, because see, to be honest, it doesn't matter. They're gonna put. Actually, I think his son is actually in coma or something. He's not even
I
alive.
heard reports.
I
We
did,
know there's a report
yeah,
today that he's still unconscious, but we also got reports that he's
yeah,
gay. So I think it's just part of the
yeah.
information warfare.
It is. No, 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 it is. It's part of that information. But to be honest, it doesn't matter who they're gonna bring next. And there is another theory that we are hearing that Arakchi, the guy, what do you call it, the spokesperson right
Foreign
now of the
minister,
regime,
foreign
yeah,
minister,
the
yeah.
foreign minister, he's been planning this whole selling information to Israel and America to assassinate these people. So it doesn't matter who's gonna come or who's gonna be next. This regime is not gonna say. And to be honest, it's just like it's worse. The son is worse than the father, because the son, by the way, was managing everything behind the scene, and the entire property that they own, which is under name of him in London, he was the one who was managing that. And there are
Yeah.
two other family members who's actually, when you trade the money and the property, it goes back to Khamenei's son. So, I mean,
But
it's
so if let's say he's still alive and he's well and he's calling the shots, then would you say the assassination of the supreme leader, the one that had a fatwa against nuclear weapons, someone who was in his 80s, the assassination of the supreme leader and other successors? So there's been reports that
yeah,
Israel,
yeah.
without Trump's approval, Israel killed successors that the US had in mind, more moderate successors. Do you think if that report is true, Israel did the wrong thing? Why would they kill successors that are more moderate and then the supreme leader's son becomes the new supreme leader? By the way, just to be clear, the supreme
Yeah,
leader's son was
sure.
meant to also be killed in that strike. He was meant to be with his father, but he went for a walk and survived.
Correct. See, it's again a conversation of the entire regime is a cancerous cell. To treat the cancer, you have to remove all of it. You cannot say, oh, this cell is this one cell of cancer is cute or it's nice or it's better than the other one. It's less damaged or less contaminated. But that's what this regime is. They're a cancer cell. They have to be removed. So a guy who comes and moderate or is a spokesperson right now or negotiate with other countries, what they're trying to do, they're trying to give more money, more oil, more gas, more promises of part of Iran, part of the everything that belongs to Iranians to certain countries to buy time or to stay a little bit longer. But this regime has shown it to the countries in the region that they have to go, and they you cannot trust them anymore. Because if you see also what they've done to Qatar, who was actually, they were friends, they had a lot of ties, and Qatar has been very helpful to Iranian regime, but then they're attacking Qatar as well.
So I want
So it's
to. I think in time, yeah. So look, my response to this, because you said that early on. You said, and I took a
yeah,
note. You said the
yeah,
fact that they have attacked Muslim countries. Number one,
yeah,
Muslim countries attack each other all the time, so it's nothing new that the regime, the Iranian government attacked other Muslim countries.
yeah,
Even Gulf countries have killed Muslims in Yemen, Muslims in Africa,
of
etc.,
course.
through the
Yeah,
proxy wars there. In terms of Iran attacking the Gulf, even though I live in Dubai, and I think
yeah,
that countries like even the UAE, but more so Qatar and Oman, they were mediators. Now, Iran's strategy
yeah,
was cause as much harm there to pressure Trump because they can't strike the US mainland. So,
yeah,
in an age of, it's always been the case, the weaker country, the weaker military will always resort to asymmetric warfare. And that should be expected. Iran warned about it. Iran said, we'll close the Strait of Hormuz and we'll strike Gulf neighbors because that's all we could do. We cannot strike Washington. We cannot strike US bases. We cannot strike California. So that's all we could do. And that's what we will do. Now, in terms of the point about the death of the supreme leader and Israel's strategy and all this, what happens if this war continues for another 6 months? Like, how far do you think Iran could sustain this? How far could Iran's infrastructure sustain bombing? Power plants and bridges sustain bombing? Let's say the regime continues fighting. They're very entrenched. What happens in 6 months' time, Mandana?
hopefully it's not going to take that long, hopefully, but let's say if it's going to happen that long. Iranian regime attacking the Islamic region and countries around them, it comes from, see, Iranian regime is not what we think. They're not that smart and calculated, because if you look at the moves, it's very wobbly, it's very shaky, right? The reason I feel they're attacking UAE and other countries around them more than Israel, even as a matter of fact, is that these Islamic countries are something that Iran could never execute it in their country. They could not
Mm.
be an open country to allow businesses to come, to allow another countries come, because they come from a whole ideology of we have to wipe down Jews, and what you're promoting in Dubai, let's say, right? It's something which is against our belief. So
I guess they
so
put
what?
ideology above. They put they're too ideological, and the
Yes.
ideology. One of the critiques I have is their foreign policy for them is more important
Yeah.
than the wellness of their people. Because if they cared about their people, you wouldn't
100%.
support. Yeah, right or wrong, you would do what the Gulf did. Because look at the
Yeah.
Gulf, how well they're doing. They don't have sanctions. They don't
Yeah.
have any of these issues. So I
Yeah.
really believe they put
Yeah.
their ideology above the wellness of their
Yeah.
people. But as
No,
just
100%. But then, my next point is that because of what they've done in the region past 30 days, Saudi, Qatar, UAE, they're not going to let this to drag that long. They're not, because this
yeah,
is
so I
not
think
acceptable in the
yeah,
region as well. And do you
it's
really think? Hmm,
it's a tricky position. Now, it's a very good point. And I've got
yeah,
one final
they're not
question after
gonna.
this. But
Sure.
there's two arguments. One of them is
Yeah.
they might want Iran to be weakened forever because they're worried that this will happen again on one side.
Yeah.
On the other side is they want the war to end as soon as possible because their economy is getting choked off. And
Yeah.
Iran could cause a lot more damage than they have. They've struck the Gulf a lot, but they've been relatively restrained. They could fire 100 ballistic missiles in one day because they're firing on a daily basis. They could fire
Yeah.
20 in one day on one
Yeah.
location, one Gulf country, on very sensitive targets in the city center and cause a lot
Yeah.
more damage than they have. And they've threatened to do that if Trump's deadline passes tonight. So they could do a lot more harm. But
Yeah.
so as a final question to you, Mandana, is if you could tell Trump one thing, and like
Mhm.
not just a kind of a broad statement, but if you could actually tell him
Yeah.
something where he listens to it, like please don't bomb this, or please go all the way, or don't stop, or don't strike civilian, whatever it is, what would be the thing that you would
Yeah.
tell him now?
First of all, I want to say thank you so much for everything that you've done so far for us.
Oh,
I
not at
could
all.
not believe, no, I could not believe where I'm sitting today and thinking about Khamenei is dead, Arakchi, this one, that one, they're all dead. Because these people, they have stolen, and I'm not even, right now, I'm not talking from Iranians, I'm talking about myself.
Oh, this is your message to Trump. Sorry. Okay.
It's
Oh,
my
my apologies.
message, yes.
To Trump.
Yeah,
Yes,
it's
of
my
course. Sorry.
message to Trump
Of course.
that
Sorry.
this regime and the people that you have killed in past 30 days, they've stolen my childhood, they've stolen my life, they've stolen the part of me that it could grow in Iran, but it didn't, and I had to run away from my country, and I couldn't go back to my country. So thank you so much for everything that you have done. And now I want to talk Mandana, who's the voice of millions Iranians. When you are addressing our nation, when you are addressing anything to do with Iran, please be specifically with your words. Iranians and the regime. If you want to do anything to them, please be specific, because a lot of Iranians, I would understand it, but a lot of Iranians are going through a lot of emotions. We are fearful, we are scared for our families. So please be specific with your words, and please finish the job. Finish the job. And a lot of Iranians are waiting for you to help you when the boots are on the ground. And this comes from millions of Iranians. They're waiting for you, they're waiting for Israel to get that last push to this regime, to throw them for once and all, not only for Iranians, but from the region.
Mandana, absolute pleasure. Col.Karen is going to be joining us. We were just talking about her a few minutes ago, but it's the first time we talk.
Yeah.
Look, if I could wish for one thing, I made that post a while ago. If I could wish for one thing, it would be for the war to end and for the regime to be replaced peacefully. Obviously,
Yeah.
that's just very, very naive wish to have. But if
No,
I
it's
had
not
to wish for something,
naive.
that would be the ideal scenario. Not peacefully. I don't think the regime will fall peacefully. I think
No,
everyone knows that.
I think
It'll
I
take
think
some
you know, another thing that we need in these times, we need to think naive and we need to be hopeful, because magic, it happens. It doesn't matter what the world is a politician can play politics, but at the end of the day, in a time like that, we need to remember that we are humans. We have to have hope. We have to keep the fight. Someone like you, thank you so much for everything that you're doing. It doesn't matter what is your opinion, or who you like and who you dislike, but the fact that you're still talking, the fact that you're still bringing people to have a conversation, because at the end of the day, we all are humans. This is what we are made for, to talk, to hope for a better world, I hope, and peace for everyone and my country.
Yeah, look, me and the former Speaker of the Knesset yesterday were doing an interview, and we were making naive wishes as well. And he's the former Speaker of the Knesset in Israel. So naivete, it's nice to have some naivete in the world sometimes. But Mandana, I hope you remain safe. And I hope you can go back to your country and live the liberal life you want to live, the free life you want to live in a much better Iran, and stay safe. I hope you remain safe.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mandana. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. All right, everyone, we've got Col.Karen, a regular on the show that'll be coming up now. Colonel, how are you? What is going on, Colonel? What is happening, Colonel?
Yeah, I have to tell you, you'll have to tell me what happened today, because I was up to the news as of last night, and today I'm not.
All right, are you ready?
Yes.
All right, there's a lot. So let me start with, everything starts with a post by Trump. So yesterday, we know the post he did. He said Tuesday will be power plant day and bridge day, all wrapped up in one. And that was the day or two ago in Iran. There will be nothing like it. Open the fucking Straits, you crazy bastards, or you'll be living in hell. Just watch. Praise be to Allah. That was yesterday. Today, he says the following, a few hours ago. A whole civilization will die tonight, never to be brought back again. I don't want that to happen, but it probably will. However, now that we have complete and total regime change, where different, smarter, and less radicalized minds prevail, maybe something revolutionary, wonderful can happen. Who knows? We will find out tonight, one of the most important moments in the long and complex history of the world. 47 years of extortion, corruption, and death will finally end. God bless the people of Iran. So obviously he was a bit more careful in the wording here in some areas by saying God bless the people of Iran, being strict and kind of differentiating between the regime and the people a bit more. Not saying praise to be Allah, which some people saw as to be mocking the Islamic faith. But he did also say a whole civilization will die tonight, never to be brought back again. So that people saw that as a genocidal threat to be made. I'll give you kind of more context what happened since. So people were up in arms. Tucker Carlson said people around Trump should resign, and they should take away the nuclear codes from him. And there's also a lot of members of Congress that are trying to take away the presidential powers through Article, I think, whatever it's called, Article 25 or whatever it is, which is, for me, looks more like theatrics. Even people like Ron Johnson, who's a staunch supporter of the president, said, I'm hoping and praying that Trump is really blustering. This is all bluster. I do not want to see us start blowing up civilian infrastructure. I do not want to see that. We are not at war with the Iranian people. In the meantime, we have Israel struck Iranian infrastructure in terms of railways and in terms of bridges in Iran. The Gulf countries are preparing for the worst. The biggest bridge, or the only bridge between Bahrain and Saudi, has been closed as of a few minutes ago or an hour ago. Iran has told Pakistan they have 15,000 missiles and 45,000 drones left in stock. We also have a report by Axios saying, there was a report by Guardian saying that people within the Trump administration are worried he might launch a nuke. I'm kind of summarizing the article, which I think it's leaks to pressure Iran. I genuinely don't think that's even a concern. The White House did put out a statement that nukes are completely off the table pretty quickly after that report. And there's a U.S. official to Axios said the last proposal we got wasn't really what we wanted, but it was a lot better than we expected. And the Iranians are kind of responding to Trump in defiance, at least publicly. And there's reports on, and the IDF, by the way, surprise, surprise, they admitted that Israel overestimated the damage to Hezbollah and believe Iran can keep firing missiles as long as the war continues. Surprise. So that's kind of a summary, Karen, of what we've seen so far. I'm hoping Trump, I believe and hope that Trump, this is all him preparing for an off-ramp, preparing to tackle. He might strike Iran hard for a day or two, but he will not go as far as he's saying he will. And then off-ramp, maybe he needs to do something for a couple of days before off-ramping. He might off-ramp tonight, even though I think it's unlikely. But I don't think he'll deliver on his threats. But I'd love you to get your thoughts on, there's a lot there. So I'd love you to kind of give us a brain dump.
Yeah, well, it's very, it's disturbing that the language he's using is language of nuclear war. Okay, it's the language of massive destruction, the end of civilizations, which even the 2 nuclear bombs that we dropped back in 45, I guess, those weapons didn't destroy Japanese society. They destroyed two towns, 2 cities. So even that language even exceeds the threat of a nuclear weapon, I guess. Plus, I don't think Trump wants to be remembered as a guy that dropped a nuclear weapon on a country where he started an aggressive war for no reason, a war that was illegal by constitutional, it's an unconstitutional war, and also a war that is, it's an illegal war in the international sense, at least in the 20th century after World War II. We said, wars of aggression are illegal. There are certain rules of war that must be followed. Otherwise, we have war crimes. And of course, what we have seen so far is not just actual war crimes committed, at least by the book war crimes, hitting schools, hospitals, residential areas, attacking civilians for the purpose of inciting terror. That's war crimes, and we've seen them do that. But we have also seen the very unusual American discussion, public discussion of war crimes, threats of war crimes. And so it's as if Trump never fought a war. And of course, as a person, he's never served in the military. He is a draft dodger in the sense of so many people of his generation who had money. He avoided putting on a uniform. And like some of those people, he becomes like a chicken hawk. He struts around and talks like the military's, this wonderful, powerful force that he can leverage and that he will leverage for good. That's the story. And so he's very typical of a lot of people who don't know anything about how militaries work and what military forces actually can accomplish in the political world. So, he says, I don't know what his objectives, what he settled on for objectives. He said, I never wanted regime change. Well, that's a lie. Every other minute he says, we have regime change. We got a better regime. We didn't want it. We did want it. We did it. Look, we assassinated their leadership, targeted assassination, first day of the war, and then later went back and have done a number of targeted assassinations of the leadership. So clearly we wanted regime change. Well, in the history of the use of force in the modern world, we know that you don't get regime change from the air or the sea, right? The only way you get regime change is if you go in physically with an army of some sort. I'm talking about externally caused regime change. Obviously, the Iranians could change their government if conditions were right, but blasting their government, attacking the people, and certainly not being very stringent with your targeting. We haven't just targeted the regime. We have targeted and killed and terrorized, the millions of people that live in the large cities of Iran. So again, if Trump knew anything about how war works, he would know that when you attack civilians, when you kill babies and little girls in schools on the first day and don't apologize and act like that was a legitimate target, you unify the people against you. You have become a monster, and nobody wants a monster in their country. So
you're saying that even if he doesn't deliver on his threats, the rhetoric enough is already crossed a lot of lines.
Oh yeah,
it doesn't seem to be working either. Like the Iranians, the more rhetoric there is, as soon as he put out those statements, there's been reports that Iran's pulled out all negotiations because of Trump's rhetoric, and they're not going to continue the negotiations. I'm like, it doesn't. Obviously, I'm not behind the scenes. Maybe it is working, but I'm like, look, I know this is your way of negotiating, but it doesn't work on everybody, and it doesn't work on these guys. They don't take disrespect well.
No, it's true. Trump has a very limited repertoire of his influencing skills, his ability to influence others. And when he comes from the real estate world in New York City, that's a mob world. Okay, that is a quasi-criminal, quasi-government world. And threats will work, especially if you can back them up. But these aren't the kinds of threats. You don't go to your mob opponent and say, well, you might go and say to him, I will break you, right? You may use those words, but you don't actually break them. You don't actually assassinate your enemy, your political, your economic competitor. It's a lot of language. It's a lot of bluster. So Trump is used to dealing with people using threats and bluster. As a president, with his hand on the nuclear weapon, with command of, or we have to assume command of the military. I mean, they've been firing all the people that oppose them, that are pushing back. There's a train of thought that says the U.S. military is not in agreement with Trump on this. But in any way, he thinks he can just bluster his way into change, and it doesn't work that way.
Karen, so Tucker, I don't know if I mentioned it earlier, but he put out a statement asking people around him to resign or stand up to him, resign, or take away the nuclear launch codes. That's too far. Like that, I don't think that's a genuine concern. You really think it's a genuine concern?
Yeah, because I honestly don't think Trump is going to push a nuclear button, but the people around him are worse. So some of the people around him would do it because they don't have anything to lose here. It's not, if you're, look, the big problem here is Israel's enemy, or Israel has made Iran its enemy. So for Israel, this is an existential war against the biggest enemy that it has left standing. Okay, so that's a very different war than the war that Trump and the Americans are fighting. We're saying, well, we'd like a better government. Oh, and then you shut the Straits, so we want to open those back up for business. I forget some of his other, things that he wants them to. Oh, we don't want you to bomb your neighbors or whatever. And honestly, we started it. We bombed them first. So a lot of Trump's goals are easily met. They could be met. Or he can talk his way into meeting them. But that's not the same for Israel. Israel needs concrete destruction, collapse of Iran. They want that. They need it.
But do you think they give up? But do you think they give up on it? When we see a report that IDF admits, so 2 days ago they said, according to Israeli media, according to IDF Israeli intelligence, Israel cannot destroy the underground missile production facilities or stockpiles with their fighter aircrafts. Only the US could do it. So that was by Israeli media a couple of days ago. And now, by the Times of Israel, IDF admits Israel overestimated damage to Hezbollah and also believes Iran can keep firing missiles as long as the war continues. And I'm sure you've seen the reports. 80% of missile launches destroyed, now it's 50. Most of their missiles are gone. Now it's down to 50. And then Iran saying they have even more. So do you think Israel is going to give up on their goal of destroying Iran because they can't militarily?
Yeah. Well, okay. There's two ways you can take it. One is hopefully that they'll just give up. They'll say, we made a mistake. We have to be happy with the damage we've done and go forward. And let's quit this. Let's quit this. That's the Israeli and the Americans could say that. But when the Israelis say, well, we have to destroy this stuff, but we can't do it by ourselves, they can very easily and probably are bringing pressure on Trump to do that. So how would he do it? The way he did it on the 12th of June, or the 12-day war in June, that's hard. I don't know if we could do that. And plus, it was not successful. Trump acted like it was a disintegration, a complete obliteration. It wasn't. So the next stage for destroying, hardened underground missile facilities and nuclear facilities, the next stage, the next level of ability to destroy it would be nuclear. So Israel has nukes. They're saying, we can't do it by ourselves. Technically, they probably could. They could drop a nuke, but they don't want their whole country to be destroyed. So
they're saying, hold on, Israel's saying that they cannot militarily deliver a nuclear warhead?
I think Israel could militarily deliver a nuke. Yeah, I think they probably could. I think they have ways of doing it. Now, if they can't, and if they don't want to, because they don't want to have the ramifications of Israel dropping a nuke in the region, then they want the US to do it. So that's one way you can interpret this discussion of the IDF admitting that they overestimated capabilities and they can't really do it. You could say, well, they want the US to do it for them. And the advisors of Trump are Israelis, okay? They are dual national, dual loyalty, Israel first people. So while I don't really think Trump would do it on his own, he is surrounded by people who might encourage him to. So that's a problem. Now, hopefully, it's like you said, we've collectively, the United States and Israel can say, you know what, we've done a lot of damage, maybe made a few mistakes. Privately, they'll say that, not publicly, and pull back. Let's make this work. And I know Trump is getting great pressure from the money people. who are also pro-Israel. So the money people, the economic, the funds managers and the market people and the federal banks and the central banks around the world, these guys are concerned. They're concerned about the loss of global production that we're seeing. So some of that pressure could come to bear. So hopefully he'll declare victory and quit. But I really don't know. It's very concerning, the language.
How do you think? What do you look at the report? By the way, keep seeing me look down as we're speaking because the news is just flooding. Everyone's just the chaos right now is something I haven't witnessed before. As throughout the entire Ukraine war, we haven't had the chaos and uncertainty. Now there was never a time is Putin. The rhetoric was they will Putin launch a nuclear weapon, but we never got close to it. What is he going to do? Maybe when we cross certain lines that Putin has drawn, maybe then there was a lot of fear, but never to the level that we're experiencing right now, because there was never that rhetoric. Even Medvedev wouldn't say the thing that Trump is saying right now. Now, obviously, that could be. I said this before and I say it again. I reserve my judgment till tonight, and even past tonight till the next 2 days. See what Trump does. If he delivers wholly or partly on his threats, then obviously I'm going to be extremely critical and upset at the results of this war. If it turns out that he tacos, I'll actually give him his flowers, because for someone that has his ego, his pride, for him to tackle in a situation like this where he's completely in a corner and he's lost this war strategically, to tackle out of this is actually, I wanted to do a post. I forgot. For someone to tackle in a situation like this, it takes courage. As a statement, a post I wanted to do a quote. A great leader knows when to walk away, something along those lines. I think that's what will apply now. But let's look. I want to go back a step and look at the reports about the capabilities. Israel now, and I posted like surprise, Israel overestimated or underestimated the capabilities of Hezbollah again and of Iran again. Did they really? Is that intentional? And can intelligence be that flawed that many times? And if so, why?
Yeah, it can. Intelligence can be flawed, particularly when it's politicized. And we, in America, we have. I mean, I've seen it. We've all seen it in the past 30 years. Politicized intelligence is a problem because it tends, intelligence that's pressured to tell the story that the politicians want to hear tends to produce that, and they will hear what they want to hear. So in the Israeli world, you can see that probably happens far more than we think it does, because we put Israel on a pedestal in terms of their intelligence capability and their military capability. We say, oh, it's the best. Well, almost the best in the world, or the best in the world. We compliment them, we hold them in high regard. In fact, it's a political state, and it is a political racist state. So it goes into its intelligence with an assumption that they're already better than everyone else. And that's nationalism, that it happens. But if you think about years and years of an approach to your enemies that you're better than them and they're less than you, they're less intelligent, less capable in every way, less moral in every way. They're worse than you. I think that's gonna shape the kind of assumptions that you make. So they've probably made these assumptions for years. In fact, one of the big problems in Israel for Netanyahu is the assumption that they would immediately eliminate Hamas in Gaza. And they have eliminated Gaza, but they haven't eliminated Hamas. Yeah, I'm gonna have to take a quick break.
Take the break, of course. Yeah, you can take a break just like I did.
Yeah,
that will remove you. The producer will remove you off screen, and then when you come back on screen, they'll bring you up. So Lisa, if you could take down Karen, I'll give kind of news update for the audience. Karen, when you're back, we'll bring you back up. But just for the audience, the New York Times just put out a story. As you saw me type here, I'm getting the team to summarize it for me. But they did a story. The title is "How Trump Took the U.S. to War with Iran." In a series of Situation Room meetings, President Trump weighed his instincts against the deep concern of his vice president and a pessimistic intelligence assessment. Here's the inside story of how he made the fateful decision. This is a story of why he started the war. And I think it's very important. I've discussed this a lot in my interviews because it gives us an idea of what his objectives are and how far he will go in this war. There's also a report that came out just now about another source as well, saying that the negotiations between the U.S. and Iran are ongoing. And Iran did put out a post saying all negotiations have ended in Pakistan. They've closed the door on any negotiations, but they've deleted that tweet and posted a new one saying no, negotiations have not stopped. So that happened a few hours ago. my team posted about it. I forgot to mention it when they posted about it a couple of hours ago. So that's a very important point. That's why I say that the rhetoric is one thing, as offensive or as upsetting you find the rhetoric from Trump. Less so from the Iranians. The Iranians have been very, very careful in what they say in this information warfare, taking a very different approach to Trump. Instead of going down the path of death to America, we'll destroy the US, we'll destroy the Gulf. They've said now they'll destroy the Gulf infrastructure. But in general, they've been very careful in what to say and what lines to cross and when, and the threats that they make, and always portraying themselves as a victim, but as a defiant victim. They're not the ones that started this war, but they will not just bow to pressure. That's been their rhetoric throughout the entire war. But going back to what was happened before is that, and Karen, I'd love to get your thoughts on that, is the rhetoric shows that both sides are not backing down, Karen. But Iran did something interesting. They tweeted saying that right after Trump's post, someone posted saying, all negotiations, the door for negotiations in Pakistan are completely closed. We're closing that door completely. And about an hour or two later, maybe even less, they posted saying, no, reports that the door has been closed aren't true. The door's still open. So the post that said the door is closed. Yeah. So how likely is it that behind the scenes there's a deal about to be signed? I really think that should be a very probable scenario, even though all the analysts are saying unlikely. The markets are saying it's unlikely, at least the oil market. The oil futures are saying it's unlikely. And the betting platforms are saying it's unlikely. But I don't know. I just have a hunch that Iranians are pragmatic, and they know they have the upper hand, but they also know they don't want their country to be destroyed. And Trump is a businessman. I don't think he's lost his mind. I know some people believe he has.
Yeah.
I really think he wants a good deal.
Yeah, I think both parties. Well, the problem is there's three parties here. I don't know what Israel wants, but I know Trump does probably want a good deal. I mean, he is concerned about his political support. I know in the Easter messages where he wasn't cursing Iran and being crazy, he was trying to kind of throw some bones to his MAGA constituents. Trying to mention some of the promises that he made that he's going to be working on and that kind of thing. So I think Trump would like to see his popularity rise. He would like to solidify his support so that the elections in the fall will go better. He obviously wants the economy to go better. So he has that. And many of his friends are urging him to deal with the situation, the economic ramifications of what we have done here in starting this war. And then Iran, of course, they say, well, all Iran has to do to win, to have a victory, is to survive. Well, that's true in a very extreme sense. But, Iran is seeing their universities bombed. They're seeing hospitals and infrastructure destroyed. And there is something to what Trump said about it'll take years for Iran to build back some of these things that we've bombed. Now, those are illegal targets, by the way. That is a war of terrorism. That's a terroristic war that we are conducting. And that makes the United States terrorists.
Which targets are illegal? The railways and the bridges?
Hospitals. No, bridges you can justify. You can justify
exactly,
bridges. Now bridges, the particular bridge was not operational. The tallest bridge wasn't quite finished yet. So they blew that up before it was finished. That's marginal.
It looked like a warning shot. It looked like a warning shot to me.
Yeah. That bridge was not being used for military purposes. But yeah, bridges, roads, railways, even some energy production. I think you can in the war book, you can justify that. But universities, hospitals, residential areas, fighting the way Israel fights. What Israel has done to South Lebanon, that is all those are war crimes. Okay, that's all illegal. And to the extent
they're wiping out buildings, Karen. Sorry, they're wiping out buildings.
Yes.
They're just coming leveling the place.
Yeah. Well, the thing, like with what Israel, what the IDF and the Israeli spokespeople have said about southern Lebanon is, get out. It's going to look like Gaza. Well, that's a pretty clear threat because they already destroyed Gaza. So we know what they're saying. So you have to kind of take that seriously. And that is illegal. That is, war crimes. If we ever get to a point where there's going to be justice, there will be trials and hangings of the people that have done this. So that's very bad for Israel. And of course, bad for Lebanon. We are adopting some of those same tactics. The U.S. target list, the U.S. Israeli target list, maybe it's the same target list. I don't know. Adopting some of that same illegal targeting, like again, hospitals, schools, residential areas, apartment buildings, And again, like with apartment buildings, Israel always says when they attack them, is that, well, there was a leader we wanted in that building, so they'll take a whole building out to get one guy that's military. That actually doesn't pass legal muster. Okay, that's not going to hack it. And we as Americans should not be adopting this as our strategy. And technically, the American Army and the American military have not adapted this as we haven't adopted this Israeli model of targeting as the American way of war. We haven't done that yet. So, and I think that's why there's pushback in the Army, particularly, and some in the Navy. You know, you're hearing about. Well, it's interesting. The 3 generals that Hegseth fired, I guess, on Friday, just right before the operation, are actually.
What do you make of this? We haven't discussed that. It's important. What do you make of it?
What it is okay. You've got the Chief of Staff of the Army. That guy is all Army all the time. Okay, and of course he's top dog in the Army. He loves the Army, and he is a serious dude. So he probably said something that he probably gave some honest feedback to the president and to Hegseth that they didn't like. Honest feedback being, we cannot put boots on the ground in Iran and win. We will be slaughtered, and it will ruin your administration, your legacy. But the other 2 guys that they got rid of are just as interesting, and they speak to the same problem that we're having in the military, particularly the Army. The other general, 4-star general that they fired was the head of what they call Army Futures, but really it used to be Training and Doctrine Command. Okay, so these are the guys. The guy that runs Training and Doctrine Command, he's looking at all the people in the military, the new enlistees, how we bring them up into the recruits we bring into the system, how we're training them, where we're putting them, how the middle ranking people, are they staying, are they leaving, what's the quality of our leadership, and then all the way up to senior leadership and strategy and doctrine. Like, do we use Israeli targets of everything and massacre and conduct terror, or is the American way of war more specific and more honorable? We take out military targets only. This is probably the discussion that many people are having, particularly in the Army Futures Command. So he fired that guy. That guy probably gave him feedback saying just what I'm saying to you. Hey, this is not our doctrine. This is counter doctrinal. To fight the way you're asking us to fight, this won't work. And then, of course, you can always, some of those doctrine guys, they conduct exercises. They design and conduct exercises that, of course, the Chief of Staff of the Army is part of. And those exercises that we have done for decades relating to Iran have never given us a win. We have never been able to figure out the way you go in with troops on the ground and accomplish any objective in Iran, much less regime change. Now, real quick, the 3rd guy is the head of chaplains. What's the chaplain doing? What does the chaplain do? The chaplain listens to people that have problems. And the chaplains are the ones who receive and have to participate in paperwork that people are putting in to be conscientious objectors. People are trying to leave the Army over this war because it's an illegal war, constitutionally undeclared. It's a war of aggression. That makes it illegal. And the most basic guy and gal in the military sees that. And they go, well, wait a minute. And then if you conduct an illegal war and you commit war crimes, even though you were ordered to do it by your president, who has published these war crimes in his tweets, in his Truth Social posts, then when the war is over, and it's a different time, and let's hope that's soon. But when that war is over, war crimes are punished. We go after people in our country for war crimes. Other countries go after people for war crimes. The IDF soldiers vacationing in Asia and Europe are finding that when they go there, they are being targeted for arrest because they have posted a social media picture of themselves committing a war crime.
That's happening now?
Yeah, it's been happening. It's been happening. Wow. And this is because of Gaza. Okay, this is because of Gaza mostly. This is not something that, we're seeing, you have a legal war against Iran. I'm talking about how IDF soldiers have been picked up, arrested, detained, or denied entry even because of what they did in Gaza. So the world is acting kind of as a jury here, looking at the behaviors. So these people that Hegseth and Trump fired are 3 4-star generals all white guys, because you say, oh, he only fires women and people of color. No, these are 3 white guys. And he fired them because they explained the reality of this thing, of this war to Trump, or tried to. And they explained it to Hegseth, or they tried to. And Hegseth said, I'm not having it. And Trump said, I'm not having it. So they got rid of him. And the chief staff, the army replacement, is a Hegseth aide, a former aide to, or an assistant. It's a guy Hegseth knows from many years back. So this is very bad. So again, okay, I don't want Iran to be destroyed. I hope Trump backs off. I hope he finds a way to explain it and to back away from it. But this war, the longer it goes on, is destroying the United States military. Okay, not just logistically. You know, we're spending a lot of money that we can't get back. We're blowing up a lot of weapons we shouldn't have wasted on this thing, but we did. We're taking hits. Many people have been killed, much more than they're telling you. The 12 people, I don't think they've admitted 12 or 13 people, 16 people, death, American soldiers. It's much more than that.
200 injuries.
200 injured, but those injured may turn up dead soon. Those numbers are wrong. It's many more. I mean, we don't have a single base occupied right now in the Gulf. All of those bases have been vacated.
I heard to have that, all of them. So, because I know that a lot of soldiers are working from home, according to the New York Times and other sources.
Well, there's
not
another
home,
joke.
from hotels. Sorry.
There's another joke. That's what I'm saying about this war is changing us more than it's changing Iran. Our military. Who ever heard of a military operating from hotels instead of their bases where their equipment is? It's insane. So. Yeah, this is a problem. Trump is, as the head of state in the United States, he has a responsibility not to destroy our military, and that's what he's doing. Not in terms of, we're getting decimated on the battlefield. That's not the case. But we are destroying our way of functioning. We are becoming a dysfunctional army, and you are seeing people refusing orders. This goes back to the fire on the, on the. Gerald Ford carrier, that stopped all sorties for 2 days. They didn't say that initially, but the guy did an interview. The commander of that ship the captain did an interview last week after they had already, the ship is out of commission. It's being worked on, but he said, we were really glad we only missed 2 days of sorties, which means that fire stopped operational, that completely. You couldn't do anything on the carrier for 2 days. That's a serious part.
You don't think it was like a small accident in the?
No, I don't think it was.
Whatever.
I don't think it was an accident. It could have been a hit, or it could have been sabotage from within. But also the just the way we're managing that same carrier had no toilets for months. I mean, had people waiting in line to go to the bathroom, and the constant stress. It was kept at sea twice as long. The longest of, I think, historical record was that same crew should have been back home in Norfolk for R&R a long time ago. So the way we are running our military is causing our military to collapse from within. We are going to need, after this, we're not going to get it, but what we need is the kind of a real strategic reexamination of how our military works and how we're structured and what we're doing, and the kind of lead. We need to start listening to our leaders in the field. We're not doing that. We need to do that. And what Trump wants to do is none of that. He wants to fire the people who are contradicting his assumptions, and throw 1.5 trillion into the military, doing the same things we're doing now, which is wrong. So anyway, it's one thing for me as an American to say I'm concerned about the destruction of our military, and I am. But it's another thing to know for a fact that the Russian and Chinese leadership and their military leadership and their intelligence organizations know far more than I do about the weaknesses of our military today because of this. And they may be content to let us continue to destroy ourselves. So that's a big concern. But on the high point, just since I mentioned this guy's a positive, maybe naive point, it is possible that the negotiations that are happening are really bigger than what we think. Not so much Iranian, but Chinese and Russia and the United States. And if that's
a lot of countries are involved. A lot of countries are involved in this because a lot need the Strait of Hormuz opened. Like it's one thing that Russia and China, I've said this before, Russia and China do want a weaker US, but they're also facing a lot of damages from the closure of the Strait of Hormuz.
Yes. Yeah.
But the thing is, Iran controls it, so Iran could allow ships heading to China to go through and allow their
Well,
ships to go
it
through.
is.
Like,
It is. You know,
Iran is making
this
more
is
money, Karen. Now, in fact, Iran, the government is making more money now than they were before this war.
That's right. That's right. And also they've done, it's even better than that. Iran has reversed, 47 years of sanctions in one fell swoop by taking charge of their strait. And it is their strait. This idea that, oh, that's international waters, go through it and see. It's not. It's Omani, and it is so narrow. It is Omani and Iranian waters, and they are asserting their control over that and monetizing it, which is fine. That's what other countries do when they control. Look, think about the Gulf of America, right? The Gulf of Mexico. We have a Jones Act, which it's been around since World War II, if not before then. And the Jones Act prohibits any foreign flag carriers to come in and do business in our Gulf of America. It's been there forever. When it was Gulf of Mexico, we still had the Jones Act. Now, they have suspended it. Congress has lifted it, waived it for a few short months in order to get oil into the refineries of Texas and Louisiana. So that's fine. They've waived it. But just think about what that says. The Gulf of Mexico, the Gulf of America is huge, okay? Huge body of water. It is no doubt international water, where you should have free flow of any ships you want out beyond 12 miles of the shore or whatever the commercial zone is. And we have insisted that is ours to monetize. That is ours to control. We will tell you which boats can come in, which ships, which flag carriers come in. We have been doing that for 70 or 80 years, at least since World War II. We have been doing that. So, and we recently waived it because of economic pressures. But for us to say, for America in particular, for the United States government to say, oh, you can't control the Strait of Hormuz, you can't monetize that, you can't determine and set rules, that is the utmost of hypocrisy. Because you can be sure if we had, actually, I don't have to say you can be sure. Trump himself said it in one of his tweets last week. He said, oh, me and whoever the Ayatollah is at the time, we will manage the Strait of Hormuz. We will monetize it. Trump's all about the money. And he said that.
I did a post, Karen. I did a post earlier today. I said international law died in Gaza.
Oh yeah, I agree. Good post. That's true. We need a new international system, and Iran is assisting in us identifying that need and actually seeing how that can come about. You do have
Kuwaiti.
to.
I was going to say the Kuwaiti Interior Ministry is advising citizens to stay indoors between midnight and 6 a.m. These are not good signs.
No, they're not good signs. And also, we hit I guess one of the if they blow up the major petrochemical plants, they've already hit a number of those. But based on the weather, some of that can actually hurt the Gulf states more than it hurts Iran, because the wind will do it that way. So the stay indoors rule makes sense. Yeah, I don't know what Trump is thinking, but you mentioned Article 25. That's our ability of the executive staff to determine the president has lost his mind or is incompetent, and often due to health reason or something. But Trump is certainly demonstrating he's insane, I think. And they can remove him and put the vice president in charge. We have not done that before. The reason we haven't done it is presidents surround themselves with extremely devoted and loyal sycophants, and loyal, devoted sycophants will never exercise Article 25. So,
what would it take? Do you know the legal aspect of it? How does it work? How does Article 25?
They have to. They senior staff, and they're named which positions they are that are part of it in the Constitution, and they have a meeting. They have an Article 25 meeting, and they speak amongst themselves, and they say, this is a problem. If it's a medical problem, obviously they'll have the medical evidence. Like if a guy gets a stroke or something, has a stroke and is incompetent and we're in the middle of crisis and he's going to be in a coma for 3 days. They could do it then, I guess. Maybe not for 3 days, but the removal of the president could be based on a health problem. And it could be based on a psychological health problem, or just the fact that the man is not doing his job. He is a risk to the United States. if they are worried that he's going to hit the nuclear button. And it's possible they are. I don't know. I mean, Trump talks a big line. I don't think he would do it, but the people around him might know more. And if they do, and they think it's wrong, they can convene and ask for an Article 25 removal of the president and replace him with the vice president. Well, this is why we have a vice president. We don't have the prime minister and the president and whatnot that can do the same thing. We have a president, and then he's got a vice president that can step in seamlessly if something happens to the president.
Bahrain announced they will cease all activities at the main port starting tomorrow. What do you make of these indicators? These are Gulf countries that are privy to a lot more information than me and you. Does it look like Trump's going to go ahead with this threat? At least I think it'll be limited, like a limited number of days. But it's just looking more and more likely he has to do something.
Yeah, it's both. They think Trump will do something, and they know that Iran will respond in kind. That's the problem. And so, I'm sure the Gulf states are concerned that when Trump blows up something that he said he would blow up, that was an illegal target, trying to destroy the civilization of Iran. But when he does that, Iran will counter with major attacks, on that will impact the Gulf states, and also pollution, and also water. The water purification targets, which could be hit by Israel as well.
I got the hiccups, Karen.
I got the hiccups. Yeah, I'm going to take another quick break. If
yeah, of course, take one, because I want to read out some news. You can take breaks anytime, because I'll just read out the news for the team. So Bahrain has announced, for the audience, Bahrain has announced a temporary cessation of activities at their main port starting tomorrow, as I just said. And that's while Kuwait asked their people to stay home, to remain indoors from midnight tonight till 6 a.m. So based on all the indicators, as I've said in my posts on X, I really believe Trump does not mean his threats, and that he's trying to pressure Iran into conceding. But I also don't think he will just tackle tonight. It'll just be a very bad look for him. So he will deliver on part of his threats. It won't be as extreme as he's making it out to be. There will be some strikes. I think it'll be more symbolic, but he has to do something, and then he'll be able to tackle later in the week. That will be my guess. But it will not be bombing Iran until the Stone Age. Again, I could be wrong, because I've always been very optimistic. But the House Democrat leadership has called for an immediate reinstatement of congressional duties for a vote in favor of ending the war in Iran. And that's after them trying to invoke Article 25, where the Vice President, J.D. Vance, takes power from Trump. A lot of people are saying that Trump is insane. He might use a nuke. I think these are too extreme. Let's hope they are. Let's hope that's not going to happen. But there's a lot of concerns. There's a Guardian article that came out that there's concerns in Trump's inner circle that he may use a nuke. I'll kind of give a recap of the latest news, including recent developments as well, for people that weren't there a couple of hours ago. So the UK has made, that's something I haven't mentioned. The UK has made it clear it will not let the US launch strikes on Iran's civilian infrastructure like bridges and power plants from UK bases. So something we're going to probably see now is Europe and other American allies coming together. I heard South Korea is pretty pissed off as well. American allies, Australia, my country, Asian countries, Europe will come together and stand up to Trump even more. Two reasons. Number one is they're against this war. And number two, they need their ships to pass through the Strait of Hormuz. And Iran's made it clear, any country like France, any country like Spain that stands up to Trump, their ships can go through. And we know that a French cargo ship was the first that went through the Strait of Hormuz because Macron was standing up to Trump. So I think we'll see more of that right now. And I think Iran will reward any country that stands up to Trump by letting their ships pass through. And to be clear, again, I want to reinstate this. I want to repeat this. Iran is making more money now than it was before the war. It's a very, very important point, because you got to look at, as Charlie Munger says, you can look, when you want to guess a decision of a leader, you've got to look at where the incentives lie. And Iran has a lot of incentives to continue this war. Their disincentive to continue the war is the threats that Trump is making and him continuing to strike their infrastructure. But their incentives is that they are making more money. And the status quo, like Iran's position right now, and I said this is a fair position to have, they're like, hey, we want to create a toll booth and charge a fee for ships going through the Strait of Hormuz. Everyone's like, no way, they don't control the Strait of Hormuz. That's unacceptable. No, everyone's up in arms. There's an important disclaimer context here. Iran said they want to do this until they get enough money to pay for the reparations from the war. because Trump is not going to pay it. They've given up on the fact. That's actually good news. They've given up on the fact that the US will pay the reparations. They know that's not going to happen. Their alternative is to collect it from the Strait of Hormuz, from the rest of the world. So the US pays almost none of it. The rest of the world will pay for the war that Trump started. That seems like a very fair deal. If I was in Trump's shoes, I was advising Trump on this, because he doesn't pay anything and Iran get to rebuild from the damage that he and Israel have caused. As long as that money goes in the right place. Now, it should be part of a bigger deal that includes limitations on the nuclear program. But there's not going to be any scenario where the ballistic missile program is going to be capped either. That's completely out of question, I think, as well, Karen. What happens to Lebanon? Because Iran's also requesting the war in Lebanon stops. Do you think Iran will not budge until Israel stops striking Hezbollah, or will they leave Hezbollah hang dry like before?
It's hard to say what's going on inside of Iran, but clearly Iran has still the upper hand in this war. It is up to them to decide when it's over. They've asserted that, and we know that. And this is about the best time that Iran will have to really begin to contain Israel and to be able to force Israel to abide by UN guidance. I mean, Israel is illegally in South Iran. That war South Lebanon. That war in South Lebanon that Israel is conducting is illegal, completely, entirely out of bounds. And of course, they're also shooting journalists and UN representatives. So they know it's illegal. They don't want it reported. They want to do what they want to do. And, I don't know how you change a country like Israel. It's a really special case country. It's out of control. It is accountable to no one, including its own people. And it's got major problems that will long persist after this war. But I would think that Iran will assess its power in this case and assert it to try to have Israel not just stop what they've done in South Lebanon, but to go back to its original, or at least its previous borders. Because after this war is over, if there's an agreement of some type, it will be with the U.S. It will be guaranteed by the U.S. And the U.S. guarantees nothing when it comes to Israel. The U.S., when Israel destroyed Gaza, we paid for that. The U.S. armed them. U.S. weapons were used. U.S. top cover at the UN was provided for Israel. We're Israel's bitch in a way, and we like that role. We're happy to do it. So it's going to take really military force or the involvement of China and Russia and maybe some other great players to really contain Israel. And that's ultimately the problem here. Okay. Again, this war started, as Rubio said, because if we didn't do it, Israel was going to do it. And then we would be a day late and a dollar short. And Israel would need us. And then we'd be forced into it. So we just went into it because we knew Israel was going to do that. That's a war for Israel. Okay. That is not something that Americans want to do. It's a problem. So the problem remains. It is nice that Iran can get the reparations through monetizing passage. That's great. It makes a lot of sense. Any other country would do it if they had the same option. The United States. Can you imagine if we were situated in Iran and we had access to the flow point, the choke point? We would monetize that. We absolutely would monetize that, especially under Trump. I mean, Trump's about monetizing everything.
Karen, Colonel, let's see what happens tonight. I appreciate you coming on as always, giving us your insight into this and analyzing it. Try to analyze it, analyze the mess that we're in. It's an absolute pleasure to have you on the show again. I'm glad your hiccups stopped. What's the magic trick that you do for the hiccups?
I don't know. Drink your glass of water. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, that's
Thank you
a
so
good
much,
one.
Karen.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. We've got Malcolm Nance joining us now, everyone, a regular on the show, to give us an analysis of Trump's comments, but also militarily, what are the various options on the table for Trump? Malcolm, how are you?
Well, I won't say that I'm glad to be here, Mario, but we're here. And that was great comments from Col.Karen. I just wish I could have that moment where I did not know what was going on in the news for 12 hours. That sort of bliss must be something else.
There's a lot, man.
I
Actually,
know.
before we get into this mess, there's one report that came out that I immediately said I'm going to ask Malcolm about it. The CIA reportedly used a new tool, Ghost Murmur, to locate the downed airmen in Iran. It can detect human heartbeat from miles away using AI and advanced sensors. Quote, if your heart is beating, we will find you. Have you seen that report? Does that
Yeah, I
surprise you?
saw
Is
that
that
report.
realistic?
It's not surprising that there's a lot of advanced technologies and that we would put on the table everything. But the old school ways are literally steeped in blood. When I was a survival, evasion, resistance, and escape school instructor, I think I mentioned this the other day, we had the entire archive of every Navy, Marine Corps pilot or person who was behind enemy lines and was captured, their entire debriefs, their entire history. So we would actually study all the techniques. There were entire studies done on what was the methodology that was best for identifying the location of a downed air crew. What would they expect to see? How would they expect to see it? What was your datum, right? The datum is the point where you have your last beacon or last known waypoint of that individual. We would use every tool, even if they had this heartbeat murmur sort of thing. The big place that I would see that being better utilized is in the immediate area of the evader, right? That's what a pilot becomes. He becomes a survivor evader when he's on deck, right? When he's out of the aircraft. To see, are there any hidden people? Goats, I'm always warning about goats because goats compromise you, donkeys, things like that in the area that could scare and start. But I'm going to tell you, we found that guy the old school way, right? Had his survival radio on, told us the number of paces that he went along a certain bearing, described the place that he was sheltering in place. Now, if he were wounded, perhaps you could use some advanced technology, a heartbeat sensor. Some of you may remember what that looks like. That's if you remember the movie Aliens, right?
Yeah.
That pulse sensor, which would tell you the biometric signature of an individual who's within an exact area. But we would just generally land that little bird on the ground, tell the guy, hey, yo, come out. Here's your identification call sign. He would come out. We'd lay physical hands on him, put him into the little bird, and away we go. So
the military capabilities
cool,
of the US
fun.
is another level. It's another level. Like the fact that they could use AI to figure out that your heartbeat from miles away, that's mental.
Yeah, but I gotta, this is what I'm trying to say is that we have centuries of combined experience of downed pilots, escapers, and evaders from World War One, right? World War II. And so it's the combined knowledge of how to conduct a proper CSAR, combat search and rescue, that a cool ass tool like this could be applied at the last moment, unless you were going to use it as a clandestine tool where it would be mounted on a drone or something small that would fly over a place clandestinely and then
makes sense.
identify you. And then you say, yeah, that guy's really there. But that drone, the Reaper drone was looking at him, was literally locked on and looking at him from, like 40 kilometers away. We're very good at our technology.
Yeah. Let's go to the developments now. So Kuwait, I was just talking about it with the colonel. Kuwait asked its citizens to stay at home tonight. Another country, let me see, Bahrain, I think they're going to close their biggest port tomorrow. Saudi closed the bridge linking Saudi and Bahrain. You know the bridge, the region very well.
Yeah, I've been across that bridge many times.
There you go. How significant are these developments? Does that mean they're just taking precautions? Could they be doing it at the request of the US as a way to pressure Iran, or is almost guaranteed that something will happen tonight?
Let's go country by country. Number one, Kuwait. Kuwait is now the largest country supporting the largest number of US troops, more than Qatar. So, you have Ali Al Salam Air Base, which was struck yesterday, 15 soldiers, airmen wounded. You had Camp Buling, which is in northern Kuwait. This is where special operations comes from, most likely where the special operations mission came from. We've had U.S. forces on Bubiyan Island launching long-range missiles off the high-mobility multiple rocket launch system into Iran. They're mad. They attacked those units the other day. We have Camp Arif in the south, where we have all these forces, some forces. And then you have, Port Ashweba, right? and where U.S. logistics forces were and where we took our first dead were all down there at that port. Kuwait is a big target for Iran, and it's also the country that is closest to Iran. I think Kuwait now, since they have been really getting pummeled, take Iran's threats very seriously, and they should. Bahrain, very small. When the Saudis closed that causeway, they did two things. First off, but for everybody who's been to that region, who's been to Bahrain on a Thursday night, you know that the reason that that causeway is there for a certain extent is there are a lot of Saudis that come over to party in Bahrain, right? Even in this close war environment, the Iranians have threatened to strike other bridges if their bridges are struck. And as you saw this morning, the Israelis jumped the gun on us, went ahead and struck 4 sets of bridges and one energy facility besides the South Pars natural gas field that they, from what I'm reading in Iranian reporting, they destroyed that facility. That would be the equivalent of destroying Ras Laffan in Qatar. Another reason why the Qataris are worried about this too. So I just think people are taking natural precautions. I'm sure the United Arab Emirates is doing it on a very low scale. But, you have to take the Iranians at their word. They've been good for it.
Iran, they've just threatened literally now. Iran threatens to target Aramco oil facilities, Saudi's Yanbu hub, and UAE's Fujairah pipeline if the US strikes its power plants, according to Tasnim, citing military source.
Interesting point here. We've been tracking, and I've been briefing this on my YouTube and Substack. We do, an hour briefing every morning of what's going on. The Habshan Fujairah pipeline, which comes from down in near Liwa, north of Liwa, the oil fields and the gas fields up there, they have already struck all 3 critical pumping facilities there, including the primary Habshan pump and compressor facility that pushes that natural gas and oil up and down the pipelines. By striking the Fujairah end of it, that's it. That's the end of it, right? Now it's not operating. They've struck it in 3 critical places, but they're saying, the Iranians are essentially saying, your ability to bypass the Strait of Hormuz, we're going to end that. Done. You're going to have to now deal with us in the SOH, in the Strait of Hormuz. Same thing for Yanbu. Yanbu was hit about 2 weeks ago. The Achilles Yanbu pipeline, which runs all the way across Saudi Arabia, just north of, I think it's just south of Jubail, all the way past Riyadh, all the way to Yanbu on the Red Sea. That is now moving all of the oil out of Saudi Arabia. 33% of its oil is now coming from there. Tankers go through the Bab el-Mandab waterway.
You've cut out, by the way, Malcolm. You've cut out, just you're speaking right now. We can't hear you. Malcolm, we can't hear you. So I can't hear Malcolm right now. Just waiting for his audio to come. It should come any second. He's had that before. We're going to talk about what happened as well yesterday in one of the Saudi facilities. That's right. Yeah, you were talking about the Yanbu hub and how important it is for Saudi to bypass the Strait of Hormuz.
If the United States does something exceptional tonight on this threat, whether I'm just going to discount the insanity of the nuclear threat that was made in the first sentence. But if they start bombing oil fields, they start bombing energy power plants, you can guaranteed 100% be sure that the Red Sea is going to close and that the Houthis are going to jump into this war both feet, and they're going to jump into it in such a way that there just won't be any getting past this. And that may include, I want you to think about this. They've been firing ballistic missiles at Israel. They've gotten in a few hits. They have a lot of ballistic missiles they've been hoarding for almost a year now. Imagine if they devastate Yanbu, just level it, the Yanbu end of the Yanbu pipeline. Then that's it. Saudi Arabia will have no ability to move oil out of their country.
That chokes off whatever percent of their economy. The majority of their economy will be choked off.
Well, I mean, they're making money now. Yeah, their oil exports are down 35%. But the money of the spot value of oil that's being purchased in Yanbu is like $150 a barrel. So they're making up the excess.
You close Yanbu, it's gone.
You close Yanbu, that's gone. And now, okay, there's another factor here. The Houthis have a lot of missiles. They can start striking ships. They can use ballistic missiles, cruise missiles.
Sorry to interrupt you. Sorry. Just that pipeline for Saudi, is that the only alternative to the Strait that's available right now for the Gulf?
Pretty much, yes. pretty much. And it was built as an emergency pipeline for just this reason. Just this reason. I don't think that there are any that are bigger. I think it breaks off and can go to Jeddah. Jeddah's closer to the Houthis than Yanbu is.
Wow.
Could be unhealthy, right? Could be economically unhealthy.
Before we go to the Houthis in the Red Sea, you saw the strike on the oil. I think it was a refinery in Saudi yesterday. It was a missile. You saw the video.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
What was that area?
Video.
What can you tell us? Do you know much about that?
That's Damam. I mean, what that was the basic. What is the name of that company there? The base. Oh, I have it right here. Funny you should mention it. We briefed that this morning. Basic Industries Petrochemical Refinery, the largest refinery in Saudi Arabia. Okay, for all you people who don't really know how oil works, you pump it out of the ground, it goes into barrels, but it means nothing until it has gone to a refinery and has been turned into one of many products. It can be turned into gasoline, petrol, or it can be turned into diesel, which is used in the cars. It just doesn't come out tar and go into your car. Then it can be broken off, and the byproducts of that process turn it into other chemicals. Other chemicals are plastics. They break it down into component parts. So, for example, if there's gas in that pipeline, they can capture that gas, break that gas down into propane, methane, butane, or break it down into helium, which is used critical to creating high technology chips. MRI machines operate on that as well. So, and hard chemicals from the byproduct process that are used to make generic medicines, which is why we're about to have a generic medicine breakdown, because none of those chemicals are getting to India, the largest generic generic medicine producer in the world. So all of this is hurting every major industry, not just oil. And even if you ship those barrels out, you got to bring it to a refinery and do that all over again. And what Iran is doing apparently is they are now striking the refineries. They struck the refinery in the United Arab Emirates. They struck the refinery in Saudi Arabia, Qatar, Bahrain. What they're doing is they are now taking your gasoline and your distilled byproducts like diesel, which means now your trucking prices go astronomical. Your Lamborghini now has to pay, won't be getting premium Lamborghini gas, right, from down, in Ruwais, down in southern United Arab Emirates. You go from the Emirati $1 a gallon gas to now $4 a gallon, which nobody has ever seen in the United Arab Emirates, right? So, or Saudi Arabia. So you're placing pressures onto the economies of these nations, individual citizens. You could get to a circumstance where if they just go crazy tonight or tomorrow and they just blast every refinery in the Gulf, not the pumping stations, the refineries, you could see where people are going to have to go home. I mean, like a million people have to return to the Philippines and India because the economy cannot maintain their presence without these petroleum products and chemicals.
So why the hell would Trump deliver on his threat? Because he will just be throwing his allies in the Gulf. He would destroy that relationship forever. If Trump crosses the line, knowing what that will cause to the Gulf, that would be a stab in the heart for these countries, unless I'm missing something.
Well, I don't think you're missing anything. I think what you're doing is you're sort of overestimating that Donald Trump thinks. I think Donald Trump is inherently a racist, a white supremacist, who in his own mind, he thinks he's playing those countries. This is the man who dropped hints through his negotiators that he wanted the Gulf states to pay for the United States war of $200 or more billion that he started on February 28th without any consultation of them. That would be tying these leaders directly to Trump, all the pain that it's cost them. This is, by the way, they are not losing tens of billions of dollars or hundreds of billions. There are trillions of dollars in market share disappeared already. Disappeared. The entire global high-tech industry, they estimate, has already lost $2 trillion of market capitalization. That means just disappeared. No one's investing. Everybody takes their money back, right? If they can't get their natural gas in Japan or South Korea, and Samsung and other countries, NVIDIA, have to stop making advanced AI chips, the entire global fantasy market already, because it had a lot of money invested in things that were promised, never delivered, the AI industry could collapse. Don't believe me? You need to go out and read Wall Street Journal, Financial Times, and all these other papers that are warning that this has a secondary, tertiary knock-on effect to every major industry in the world. I mean, depending on what happens tonight, we could easily see $5 gasoline per gallon in the United States. But I was just in England and Canada and Europe. And that means if I'm driving my rental car in Copenhagen like I was last month, you're looking at $10. You're looking at, let me see, what is that? About $4 per liter. So that's for $12 per gallon in Europe. And that was pre-invasion. It was pretty cheap. It was about $8 per gallon. This is now going to push things way off the chart because the market wants stability and certainty. And as Emmanuel Macron said the other day, he couldn't believe that he was actually having to argue to the world that France is predictable and stable and a better investment than the United States. But everything here is going to impact all of your lives. And anybody who thinks that it doesn't, we're America, we're strong, we can do whatever we want. Yeah, okay. You keep thinking that fantasy, and the hard reality will bite you very soon.
Iran made a threat yesterday. They said they're going to remove all limitations in their retaliation on the Gulf. There's not going to be any more restraint whatsoever. So that was last night. Mm-hmm. What would retaliation by Iran against the Gulf without restraint look like?
Well, let me give you a microcosm of it because they've been practicing. First, they've been practicing on Kuwait. Over the last 7 days, they struck 2 out of 8 of the Kuwaiti desalination plants inside the country. Kuwait is 100% dependent on desalinated water. They're not out drinking bottles of Evian water, right, and flying them in from Europe. They get it from the ocean. They desalinate it, they burn it, they create a condensate. The condensate cools, is collected, turned into billions and billions of gallons of fresh water for the population of Kuwait. Iran has struck 2 of those sites. If they struck 6 more tonight, Kuwait would now be in a circumstance where they would literally be starving for water. They would have to literally move trucks by the hundreds, water tankers in from Saudi Arabia and other parts of the Middle East, Jordan, Iraq, places which have a higher water table. This would be a natural disaster of epic proportions. You'd technically be moving Kuwait back to 1935, right? Before oil was found there. And everybody would have a few tribesmen. Man. I've been to Kuwait City. I lived in Kuwait City for a while. By the way, full disclosure, I liberated Kuwait City and stayed there in the post-war after we kicked Iraq out. The population there is massive now. I mean, massive. All of the southern suburbs have merged together with Kuwait City. They have also a support population in the millions or over 1 million that support the few tens of, 100,000 Kuwaitis. Where are you going to get your water from for them? You could bring in emergency desal plants from around the world, but you're talking billions to restore that system. The Iranians know that, and they know that they could make it insanely painful for the Kuwaitis. That is a microcosm. They also hit the Al Ahmadi port. They hit the Ashweik oil refinery. And what else have they hit there in Kuwait? They hit the airport. They hit the air bases. What I saw about their attack on the airport was they not only hit the radar, they blew up every oil tank storage there to take away Kuwait Airlines' ability to refuel aircraft, right? They blew every tank up that they had. Back to why they're hitting the refineries. Once you've lost your ability to store oil at an airport, for example, you can't refuel any aircraft that lands there. And if the refinery is blown up and destroyed or goes offline, you can't take the jet fuel that was in the pipeline that was about to be delivered there. So now you have no place to produce it, no place to store it. Now your aircraft are stuck on the ground or you have to divert to another country. I suspect on Kuwait, because Kuwait has so many U.S. forces there, they're really just practicing a Gulf-wide strategy on that country.
Man, I'm not keeping up. It's just so hard to fathom. Like, how would the Gulf look like? I'm just trying to imagine how it looks like, trying to get more information on the things that you're saying and what that would what would lead to. How will there's one comment here says, how will the Gulf look like, Malcolm, if this goes on for another 3 months?
Well, another 3 months is a completely different animal, because now you're talking about the collapse of the global economy, not just the Gulf states economy, the globe. All right. Again, do not believe a word I say about this. Go to all the big market websites and go look at their projections. And the last projection I saw was 3 to 4 weeks, the economy will be in the balance. I mean, the entire world could be on the edge of a recession, to where every country in the world, save a few, will be impacted. Just because Nigeria sells oil and Venezuela sells oil, those oils have differing qualities. They cannot be, you know what? Best guy in the world on this is a guy on Twitter called Mr. Global. This guy knows everything about oil and the quality of oil. And he has been pulling his hair out for weeks, like this could get really bad. Let me give you an idea of what it could look like. First off, you have these support populations in these countries. You and I both lived in the United Arab Emirates. You have, hundreds upon hundreds of thousands of Filipinos, if not almost nearly 1 million. Pakistanis, my late wife worked for Aldar. She had 50,000 Pakistani workers building Raha Beach project in Yas Island when she was there, right? These are mega projects. Many of those people can't be displaced. You cannot get them home because the airports are closing, right? So I can't even imagine the exodus of people and how they would get out of the country. You would have car caravans going to Fujairah and trying to get boats back over to Karachi. I mean, if the jobs dry up, the contracts dry up, the government does one of these things. I don't know if I ever told you this story, but in 2008, I met Sheikh Khalifa's chief of finance. He actually introduced himself as the wallet of the United Arab Emirates. And he once said to me, he said, we're going to turn this country off, all investments, until January 2013. And he did, click like a light switch. Nothing was funded until January 2013. The UAE lived on its interest revenues from investments around the world and then flicked them all on after 5 years. That's how disciplined the nation is. But the income that would have come to sustain Dubai, right, and other places like that is going to be horribly, dramatically imported. Look, here's what's not going to close. Carrefour's not closing, right? All these other small places. Caribou Coffee's not closing. But a lot of bars, restaurants, support centers, and then all these expats who live there, who were investment expats, Brits and others, they're going to go home. And one last thing, a lot of them are just going to abandon ship, especially if, and you and I both know this, if you have a debt in the United Arab Emirates and you cannot service that debt, you are liable to go to prison.
Yeah.
Right? And that's why you see Aston Martins abandoned at the airports. Back in the great abandonment of 2008, there were in Abu Dhabi airport 3 Aston Martin, what's the highest end car that they have, and a Rolls Royce that sat there for almost a year. A year, because people just walked away. I've seen that in Dubai airport. That too will have an impact because those banks cannot recoup their debt. They're not Emiratis, therefore that debt cannot be alleviated by government payment the way that they do during Ramadan, during Eid, right? And investments will not come back, which means hotels will be empty, apartments will be empty. And you know how it is in the Emirates, right? You have to pay your apartment 1 year in advance, in full, right? That's investment capital that is no longer going down to the Emiratis. That I'm just using the Emirates as an example. Every Gulf country has the same laws for the most part. Saudi Arabia can sustain it more, 25 million people versus, almost 500 to 600,000 Emiratis. Bigger land, works on a tribal system. The government has a lot of overseas investments. But will Trump Tower Riyadh survive? Will the Trump International Golf Course Dubai get funded? Most likely not.
The markets are relatively stable but on edge. They've dropped a bit. Let me see. Wall Street is waiting for Trump's deadline. U.S. stocks dropped on today as market brace for Trump's 8 p.m. deadline for Iran to reopen. Investors are not panicking, but they're clearly on edge. I think no one really has any idea. I think the best way to know is you look at the action that's happening, not the words. It's number one. Number two, what makes most sense from a military perspective. So putting your military and political hat on, what is the most likely scenario?
Okay. Are we talking common sense or are we talking Trump's? Because that's two entire.
Let's do common sense first and then Trump second.
Common sense first. If I was chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, I would have my battle staff from Defense Intelligence do a full national scrub of what the Iranian forces were and what the Iranian forces are. And then I would have to ask a straight up question to the Secretary of Defense and the President, both of them. Is your objective to remove every ballistic missile in Iran? And if they say yes, then you'll say, okay, we are going to maintain combat operations for the next 30 to 60 days, as it is going right now. Okay, which could include us literally using every advanced missile the U.S. inventory owns. Right? We've launched almost 2/3 of our Tomahawk cruise missiles and almost all of our joint strike missiles, which were our key card in a defensive war with China. If China were to attack us, they could do insane damage like December 7, 1941 again with drones. They could hit Pearl Harbor. We would have almost nothing in between to stop them. We've wasted a lot of resources on this war and now not having anything to show for it. I believe the Iranians when they say 15,000 ballistic missiles. But let's say that half of those are trapped underground and they won't be able to dig them out. Okay, the minute this shooting stops, they're going to dig them out. Same thing with the drones. I remember saying on your program, Iran had an estimated 80,000 drones before this. They've only fired about 4,000 of them. I assume, as a defense intelligence example, to where half of them have been destroyed. Let's just say half are destroyed. That's 40,000. Let's assume that the numbers they fired.
Malcolm, they've claimed. Do you know they've claimed today that they have 45,000?
Yeah. Well, I'm just getting to my number. I'm assuming that half of them are gone. Right. That brings me to 40,000. They fired 4,000 off. That's 36,000. 36 to 44,000 is a good range. But you notice how that's reality, right? That is how we do intelligence estimates. And that's if we did a great job wiping out half the drones. That still leaves you at least 36,000 drones they have not fired off that are sitting in people's garages and warehouses. I would, if I were chairman of the Joint Chiefs, I'd say, hey, hard reality time here, Chief. Okay, you need to figure out what your objectives are. If it's to neuter Iran, that is not going to happen. We could be at combat for the next year. You decide. But if it's to meet these objectives, Army, Navy, air defense, most of the Iranian Revolutionary Guard aerospace ballistic missile force, and we could restore freedom of navigation in the Strait of Hormuz by just ending our combat operations. The Easy Pass, multi-pass toll booth around Larak Island will go away because insurance companies will start insuring ships again and the ships will start flowing. I would call that a win-ish, but in reality, Iran would have won. They sustained everything we could throw at them, shy of a nuclear weapon. And we aren't even going to discuss that, even though Trump hinted at that last night. That's madness.
You think he hinted at it? Because people
he didn't hint at it. No, I mean, he didn't hint at it. He flat out stated it. For those people, I know there's a lot of MAGA people out there, a lot of people who are like, oh, Malcolm, you don't know what you're talking about. I worked at a national nuclear command post for a short period of time. And let me tell you, the first thing they do is they drag your ass in and they show you the big board and they show you what a full-scale atomic attack on the United States is like. And you know, every person in that room walks out and goes, I hate nuclear weapons. It is not a joke. It is not funny. It is not something the president should imply. It is not something the president should threaten with. And when he made that statement of a civilization will be, what did he say, destroyed or exterminated or whatever? What's the exact quote?
A whole civilization will die tonight, never to be brought back again.
How do you do that? I get these people going, oh, he's talking about the regime. That's bullshit. A civilization. There's only one civilization that's there, and it's been there for 5,000 years, and it's the Persian civilization.
But what if he's bluffing?
Any president of the United States. I'm sorry, I'm about to make a definitive statement here, and this is why I get mad, because I understand the power of those weapons. Any president since Truman, no president since Truman has ever even leaned into the hint that the United States would use an atomic weapon in an offensive fashion to destroy another people's, because it's indiscriminate, right? You hit Tehran, everyone goes. Everyone that supports us, everyone that didn't support us. The United States becomes a global pariah the next day. The entire global economy collapses, okay? Everything that ever had a tie to the United States will freeze. All of our allies will abandon us. It would show that Donald Trump has lost his goddamn mind. So if we make jokes or hints or comments like this, this shows that he is either one, mentally incapacitated and needs to be relieved of his command, because we wouldn't tolerate this as a joke against any military officer. But here you have the president of the United States drawing broad hints. Most U.S. news media has taken this very seriously as that this was a threat of the use of atomic weapons. And the last person to open his mouth about atomic bombs was Harry Truman, because he used it, right? Vaporized 200,000 Japanese in 2 seconds.
As soon as the Guardian article came out that people, I'm not sure if you saw it, people close to Trump are worried that he'll use a nuke. The White House immediately put out a statement that this is not under consideration whatsoever. So what is the possibility that Trump is being Trump, just like he said, Canada will be part of, will be an American state, which one would assume this is invading Canada and this is invading an ally.
I keep getting that, all right? I had two Canadian let's talk about that Canadian thing, because people go, Malcolm, you predicted he would invade Canada. Two prime ministers of Canada were told straight to their faces he would annex that country and he would break them economically and that they would be joining the United States as states. Well, how do you do that without putting U.S. forces in that country? U.S. law enforcement, where they just bring down the Canadian maple leaf and bring up the American flag and all swear an oath to the Constitution of the United States, right? 25 million people? It doesn't work that way, okay? These are not jokes when the president of the United States says them. And if it was a joke, and if he was like, oh, I was using hyperbole, he needs to be relieved of his command. No one, if you understand the lethal power of one atomic bomb, just 1 kiloton, right, is enough to wipe out hundreds of thousands of people in a flash of instantaneous vaporization. Oh, and for those of you who think it's just a weapon, okay, when I was a kid, I'm 64 years old now, China used to test nuclear bombs above ground all the time. So did the Russians. And I remember we were visiting when I was in high school a nuclear power plant, Peach Bottom, near Philadelphia, and all the alarms went off. And they were like, oh, just take it easy. That's radiation coming down from the atmosphere from China. They didn't even announce that they had a nuclear test, right? Radiation falls everywhere. It falls into the grass and rain, and your cows eat it, and it's in your milk within a couple of days. Okay, this is not funny. It is not something to be taken as a joke. It's not a weapon you choose from Call of Duty. This is the sort of thing. If
will
Donald
it impact
Trump,
the U.S.?
It'll impact every country in the world. You know, that dust goes up into the stratosphere and goes all over the world, right? Mount St. Helens was a mountain that blew up and it freaking shaded out most of the northern hemisphere for a few days. Atomic bombs throw radioactive Earth into the stratosphere. Don't believe me. People, for Christ's sakes, just Google and watch the videos. This is why it's not a joke. The man has control of 4,500 of these. And to threaten it that he will wipe out the Persian civilization, right? Oh,
What are the
by
checks
the
and
way,
balances?
one other real joke here that somebody said. He goes, "We're just talking about killing the Muslims." Does everyone not know that that Iran has been Islamic since the year 651? This isn't a joke, people. Stop joking about this and stop giving them a pass. Hey, go ahead. What's your next question?
What are the checks and balances for the president of the United States to use a nuclear bomb? We used to talk about Russia, but now we're talking about the US.
That is an excellent question. I'm glad you asked me this because this was one of those questions that came up when I was going through our indoctrination and what a national nuclear command post is. There is one person in the chain of command for the use of nuclear weapons. That's the president of the United States. There is no other authority where he has to consult anyone or ask permission. If he breaks open the football, chooses an option for attack, decides that he's going to fly a commando force in or use a B-1 bomber, B-2 bomber to drop a B-21 nuclear warhead with an advanced penetrator on it on the Isfahan Nuclear Research Center, and that 5 kiloton warhead detonates, collapses that mountain on top of everything, yeah, you'll have gotten rid of the Iranian nuclear program. You will now throw thousands of metric tons of radioactive dust into the sky, and it will fall all over the Middle East.
I know that in Russia, there's checks and balances where leaders or generals within the Russian military can stop an order by Putin. Maybe I'm wrong. An order by Putin to launch a nuclear weapon. Is that wrong? And also, is there no one that could stop the president? No one that could stop a nuclear weapon from being launched in the US? And can the president launch it without any? Is there certain criteria that should be met before he can launch? Exactly. Not authority, or the criteria is what they has to follow?
No. There's a great, I think it was the Washington Post. Go look it up. There was a great article done on a major newspaper about 6 or 7 years ago about Trump and the madman theory that we're talking about today. And it was called "The President of the United States is a Nuclear Monarch." There is no authority other than him. We have never passed a law that says the president of the United States has to consult with anybody. Now, if he goes to the Navy commander or Army colonel or whoever it is that's carrying the nuclear football, and he says, "Open it. I have determined that there is an existential threat to the existence of the United States. I am about to make a command decision as the national command authority." That person is required by law to open that briefcase for him. Now, the briefcase only holds a communications protocol and biometric and physical cards in which only the president of the United States could authorize an attack. And if he goes, "Open it up, I want Isfahan nuclear weapons facility destroyed," right? Secretary of Defense has no input on this. No one has any input on this. He could just authorize it himself. And then using that system can communicate directly to the authorize the system. X code goes in, X code goes out to the computers. Option is chosen based on what weapon system you want. If it's a B-2 bomber, that takes a long ass time. Get that bomber into the air, get the B-21 broken out of a nuclear weapons storage facility, which, by the way, Mario, every fucking person on that base will go nuts and call their wife, their kids, their dogs, and they will say, "We're breaking out a real B-21 bomb to be loaded up on a B-2 in Whitman Air Force Base in Missouri right now. I think Trump's going to nuke something," because we don't do that. We don't break open real nuclear weapons like that. But if his option is a Minuteman LGM-30 ground-launched ballistic missile, nothing intervenes. The 2 officers that are down in the launch silo, the missileers, they don't know if it's real. They don't know if it's fake. All they know is when they're down there on that watch, when the code comes down, if authentication and authentication match, they are physically separated. They take their keys, they look at each other, and they say on the count of 3, "Mark, turn your key. 3, 2, 1, mark." Key turns, missile flies, no way to stop it. If it's on a ballistic missile submarine, same thing. right? Communications gets an emergency action message. The emergency action message will be spin up atomic bombs on ballistic missile tube, whatever. Could be one Trident D4 missile with 12 independently retargetable warheads. And he could put an end to every city in Iran over 500,000 people. But none of these things require human intervention.
You think
Other
they'll carry
than the
out their
B2.
orders? I saw the Washington Post article, by the way. So key points from it, exactly what you're saying. It's the US president has sole authority to order a nuclear strike. They can consult others, but are not required to. Once the order is given and verified, launch can happen within minutes and can't be recalled.
Cannot be recalled.
That's a very important point.
There is no ballistic missile self-destruct mechanism, right? Once those two keys turn, it's live. And here's the only, I would hope that it would be, of all people on this planet, Vladimir Putin or Xi Jinping, who would be getting their intelligence that, hey, are you aware the United States has busted open a live nuclear bunker and are loading a B-21 atomic bomb onto a B-2, bomber whose flight plan is Middle East? And that Putin would be getting on the red phone and going, yo, you need to chill out on this. Or he sees he sees the warning order and that the silo top of a Minuteman missile is starting to spool up, and the communications around that airbase is showing that a live launch is being ordered, or that somebody runs out of the White House before they put it in lockdown, grabs a phone from someone in the middle of Lafayette Square, calls the Washington Post and CNN and says the president's lost his fucking mind. He is about to launch a nuclear attack on Iran. But by the time any of those scenarios happen, that missile is in the air.
Do you think they'll carry out the orders?
They will carry out
holding
the
the nuclear
orders.
football will carry out the order.
Listen, the only way that he's going to be able to recall that is if it's a B-2 bomber. But once that order is given, it is, if it's from a ballistic missile, which, by the way, takes 23 minutes to go from Kansas to Tehran. We used to call it the 23-minute option. It's done. It's done. Now, the fact that we're talking about it is because he didn't hint at it. He pretty much stated he would end the civilization. And there is no conventional weapon. If we fired every bomb in the entirety of the U.S. Armed Forces inventory simultaneously, we could not end the Persian civilization, right? 93 million people aren't going to disappear. But you could disappear 50 million of them, right? If you were to launch more than one atomic bomb, you could destroy the population of Tehran.
Malcolm, just now, as you're speaking, breaking simultaneous Iranian missile attack against Qatar, UAE, Bahrain, and Kuwait. Simultaneous.
Yeah,
missiles, all of them. Usually, I haven't seen simultaneous missile on all of them at once. I've seen missile here, missile there, drones here and those there.
I keep telling you that the Iranians do incremental steps. The Israelis hit them. The Iranians are showing. Yeah, the Iranians are showing the Gulf states, your doom could be a lot worse than this. We're just going to give you a little taste of what's going to happen tomorrow, right? Because it's evening now, right? Are we pushing 3 p.m.? Middle of the night. If the United States is going to do anything froggy around Karg Island, it's going to happen right about now. So all of this is going on. You need to understand these Iranians are not, as a bunch of people in your comments always like to say, a bunch of towel heads, right? Smart, thinking, adaptive. And you killed off all the old guys my age, okay, who would be calm and rational. You have young guys who are looking out for revenge now. And they are smart, they are adaptive, they think on their feet. And if you kill them, their buddy next to them takes over. You're not going to work your way through 93 million people to get all the leadership. It's impossible.
I know we're at time, man. I'm just giving you a moment of silence to this discussion.
Let's see what happens here. And let's just hope that Trump... Here's the problem, Mario. My last point. Trump could consult with anybody. But you have to understand that when he suffers a narcissistic injury, as his niece, Mary Trump, who's a psychiatrist, says, he feels like he has to lash out and do something bold and big. And if that means even tying his name to the only president since Harry Truman to release a nuclear weapon, right? And eliminating the mullahs of Iran permanently. Somebody quickly look up the population of Tehran, right? And if he were to take that option, 9 million people in the greater Tehran area. And you know it's at the bottom of a bowl of mountains, right? Which means when that bomb, it's like Denver. Tehran's terrain around it is like Denver. When that device goes off and the blast effect goes in every direction, but the blast effect that goes west up the mountain, right, is tamped and it may come back down the mountain. So this is madness that we're even talking about it. I feel insulted and ashamed that as a U.S. intelligence professional, that these thoughts are clearly going through the mind of a president of the United States. We have never at any time, even in the Cuban Missile Crisis, John F. Kennedy never hinted that he would use a weapon to eliminate the civilization of Russia. Never.
Yes, confirmed. First time ever they strike them all simultaneously.
It's going to be bad. It's going to be bad, but it's just a warning.
Why?
Remember what
One
I
last
said?
question. Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, remember what I said about there are deeper, more physical options the Iranians can do? I get all these people who go, they could never invade Iraq. They could never invade Kuwait. They could never invade the UAE. Yeah, they could invade Kuwait tomorrow.
Yeah, we spoke about it and it was unheard of. Then it became a discussion when you were bringing it up.
But half of these missile attacks on Kuwait are coming from the Hijab of Iraq. What if they all mobilize? The Hashid, the Iranian military and the Yemenis. You know, I tell people to look at this long term. Someone there, you know, even if Khamenei is in his bed in a coma, he's got a deputy who has his authorization. And they start thinking, you know what? I think it's time to get our Zulfikars, right, our two-headed swords, and to march and take claim of Islam again. But, you know, when would you see that? After an atomic bomb goes off in Iran. You can't kill everybody. The bomb will only vaporize one tiny little area. The other 93 million people will be on jihad, and they will have it in for everyone that supported the United States. And guess what? The rest of the world will be like, go to it. No problem.
Sorry, man. I'm just, it's a lot, man.
It is.
Last question. Do you think,
yeah, go ahead.
Do you think Iran, what do you think Iran's doing behind the scenes? Because they're being very defiant publicly. Do you think behind the scenes they're being a lot more rational, trying to get an off-ramp as well, trying to negotiate some sort of deal?
I'm going to show you right now what they're doing. They're having a shy.
They're enjoying this. They're enjoying having a shy.
And like the Prophet Muhammad, they have 3 dates sitting next to them. And they are just sitting there watching the United States go out of control. Trump is in a spiral of chaos right now. It is Trump that is showing himself as the irrational person. Let me ask you something. We have bombed over 14,000 targets in that country. What more do you think we can do to them? So I keep saying this, and this is not a joke. This is an absence of and respect of a foreign culture. So long as food comes into Iran, it's coming in from everywhere. Food's not stopping. So long as there's the ability to do business, so long as you could get that oil into barrels and into trucks to go up through Turkmenistan, money is to be made. Donald Trump has made them $14 billion already, allowing their oil to go out of the country unsanctioned. So what are you going to do to them? Blow up buildings and bridges? Okay, they can be rebuilt. You're not vaporizing the people.
Already reports of impact in Doha and Qatar.
Ah, jeez.
Impact, not interception. Impact.
I know. All right. Well, that's a sign for us. I gotta go check on all of this.
Brother.
I was supposed to be flying into Abu Dhabi this week, so
you're gonna have.
If there's a ground war, if the signs of a ground war hint, all right, you and I are gonna be down at JBR having margaritas.
You've got balls, man. Malcolm, always a pleasure. Thank you so much for joining.
All right, Ariel, my pleasure.
I always appreciate the analysis, man. For the audience, just kind of recap to everything. I'll be going back live before the deadline, just so we cover it and we analyze what could happen and what the outcome could be like. Obviously, we spoke to Malcolm now about the possibility of a nuclear strike, not by Israel, not a dirty bomb by Iran, which has been the discussion so far, but because of Trump's rhetoric, we're talking about a potential nuclear strike by the US. Now, you know my stance. If you look at my X account, I really think this is Trump bluffing. This is a negotiating tactic. And the more extreme his statements, in my view, this is him clearly saying he wants to end the war and trying to pressure Iran to concede. Will Iran concede? Even if they don't, I said this as well, even if if Iran does not concede, Trump doesn't need them to give him an off-ramp. He can off-ramp himself. He can create his own off-ramp. And I really believe he has no choice. But there is another argument to be made where even if Trump wants to end the war, as everyone believes, he also cannot taco again at this time. It's very, very damaging optically, especially in the eyes of his voters. So he needs to deliver on his threat with some sort of blow. And he might, again, plan a 1-2 day operation against Iran and just strike some of their infrastructure. But that type of mentality is what got us in this war that should have lasted 4 days, and look where we are now. So Trump doing the same thing again now could drag us into a prolonged conflict. And every person I spoke to, whether they're pro-Iranian, pro-American, pro-Israeli, pro-whatever, pro-Gulf, like yesterday, everyone understands that if this goes on, if this drags on, this will be catastrophic to Iran, to Israel, to Lebanon, that is a forgotten war right now, to the Gulf will never look the same again, and to the global economy, Asia, Europe, more than the US. So I'll continue covering this as objectively as I can, giving my thoughts and covering the news objectively as well on the X account. We'll keep trying to do interviews. I hope you guys enjoy the different voices that we'll bring on to try to give you all a different perspective. But, if you're religious, maybe now is a good time to pray before the deadline ends. I think he's bluffing, but, I don't have the president on speed dial, so I have no idea. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed the marathon show today for 3.5 hours, and we'll probably see you again soon before the deadline ends. Thanks, everyone.